stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Note for the record that all council members are present.
Okay. Do I have an adoption for tonight's agenda?
Like two things. The close in memory of our police chief's father, Mr. Macias, who passed away Saturday, I believe it was. And also, I'm I think from the 1940s. And also Dawn Bain, who passed away recently, and she also was a longtime resident, I think, since the year before Brisbane Incorporated. So, I'd like to close in their memory.
All right, we shall do so.
And with that, move adoption of the agenda if there aren't any other changes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Oral communication, so we have two folks. Michelle, your list is on top. So.
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident. I have two things. The first one is about the noise that several people have been hearing, and I have been hearing it a lot, and that's that 3-second pulse that happens every 30 seconds, and it's making me crazy. And I can't stand it, and I want it to stop.
3-second what?
There's a 3-second pulse that happens every 30 seconds, and it sounds like it's a foghorn that's gone haywire, and it goes 24/7, and you can hear it in various parts of town.
That's the San Bruno show.
Are you sure?
I think the one goes...
Yep.
Yeah.
And several people have said they think it's the San Bruno Channel Marker or the San Bruno Shoal, and apparently it's operational from October 1st through April 1st. But why is it operational 24/7 regardless of the weather? I don't understand that. And to me, it's noise pollution at its most insidious form, where it's just this constant. I wake up in the middle of the night, I hear it. I get up in the morning and I hear it. And I'm not the only one who hears it all the time. And I'm blessed with good hearing, unlike some members of my family. But I'd like to preserve that hearing so that I can hear things like silence and know that it's silent. And so I'd really like the city's help in tracking this down and resolving the issue, because I think that it is
for sure.
noise pollution at its most insidious.
Yeah, I've never heard it before, but now I'm gonna.
Now you're going to hear it
Thank you,
every 30
Michelle.
seconds for 3 seconds.
Being somewhat deaf,
Yeah.
I always hear it too. You know, I mean, but I know what it is, but I think we can have our harbor master verify that.
Yeah.
You know, I used to hear it when it was foggy, and it was like no problem. It's comforting to know that we're being protected in the fog, that nothing's going to run aground. But on a bright sunny day, 24/7, but only from October 1st through April 1st, there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. So I think it needs to be fixed. And then the other thing was something that when I was going over the agenda and prior to coming to the meeting tonight kind of gave me some concern of what I saw on the closed session, just a brief description. And it made me wonder, Southern Pacific Railroad easements. I hope that we're not contemplating any kind of giving up of those or exchange or whatever that would be behind closed doors. I can understand closed sessions being for, personnel issues, litigation, but from just the description here, I question that, and it concerns me. And I'd like some guidelines on what should be in a closed session and what should not. And, I mean, just seeing the address 325 Valley Drive gives me chills. So I'd really like some clarification on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Hal?
One of the permitted categories of closed session is if there's a transaction involving real estate, if you identify the real estate, and the purpose of the closed session is to give your negotiator instructions from the city council. If there is a transaction, it would come back to the council for consideration at an open meeting. So right now, there's really no action that has been taken in closed session. It would just be to discuss a subject that relates to this property, where discussing it in public might affect the the nature of the discussions, but I can assure you that no transaction would be consummated regarding the property except by the council at a regular or special meeting open to the public.
All right. Tom?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Tom Hines, Brisbane resident. There's an old saying that it's very easy to be a Monday morning armchair quarterback. I realized that there was a lot going on about the city that I didn't know about. That's one of the reasons I went to the Citizens Academy. It's one of the reasons I came to your retreat last week. And despite the public not being able to participate, and despite giving up a gorgeous Saturday, I had a good time. So to that end, I invite each of you to meet with me to discuss my observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else in the audience would like to speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda? Nope. Okay. So now we move on to presentations, and we have two of them. Caroline?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. So the first of the two presentations tonight has to do with a film called No Deposit, No Return that was brought to our attention by Councilmember Conway, who had received the film by Brisbane resident Michelle Salmon. And part of the reason why it's before you right now being presented is that it was asked whether staff could look to find the original footage, the 16mm reel footage, and that was found eventually at San Francisco State University. They have a TV archives department and a resident film archivist dedicated to cleaning and correcting the color and sound of these reels of film that he gets from the news stations, the local news stations. And so it's a great glimpse of part of Brisbane history that we wanted to be able to show you tonight. And so I'm going to just show a 2-minute clip and then a 1-minute follow-up clip. And I wanted to also ask your feedback as to the best way to make known of this resource to the rest of the community. So with that,
This will be interesting. You seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michelle shared it with me, and then asked her to make me a copy, and then brought it down here
Yeah.
and kind of took off. But actually,
The material used to cover up the garbage is called sanitary fill. Sanitary fill is the official euphemism for dirt, and you get dirt by tearing down a mountain. The yearly garbage bill for San Francisco is $500,000, a lot cheaper according to those in the garbage business than the $25 million they figure it would cost to build an incinerator operation. Besides, when a mountain is leveled, the site can be used for buildings, and the garbage-filled lagoon can also be turned into profitable building sites, and all that real estate can be taxed. But the people of Brisbane, or at least a large number of them, were not at all happy about the prospect of letting San Francisco continue to dump its garbage at their front door. Last summer, anti-garbage forces mustered some 500 signatures on a petition to stop the dumping, and the Brisbane City Council put the question on a September ballot. Garbage had become such a hot item that it was even the basis of a recall movement against the mayor of the town, Jess Salmon.
My concern is the community and the bay. It's getting farther and farther from us, and I have a fear that if we can't fill it with garbage, that it will eventually be filled with clean dirt. That is fine. But clean dirt may come from the top of our San Bruno Mountain, and this I am opposed to.
So the way things stand now, you would rather see this filled with garbage than to take the chances of the future?
Very true. Garbage will produce a revenue. The revenue produced from garbage is comparable to 30 cents on the city tax rate. The dirt being removed from our mountains will produce nothing for us except industrial land. Industrial land we're going to get either way.
Okay, it's quite interesting, isn't it? And I'm just going to fast forward to another 1-minute clip that has a pretty
continually
catchy
undermine
tune.
the garbage and transport it along the shore, strewing the broken, the corroded, the decaying, all the things we don't want anymore but just can't seem to get rid of.
Last year's nylons, last night's news, rusted out cup, a burned out fuse, dented hubcap, apple core, that old necktie grandpa wore, magazines from 1903. They're right here for all to see. Dump your garbage, let it burn, no deposit, no return.
Okay. I know you want to keep on watching, but you don't want to be here all night. And so those two clips just illustrate part of the problem that was becoming known to society at that time. It was filmed in 1965, and it goes on to talk about the contaminated air and water quality hazards and how the problem was so vague. It didn't touch people personally, and it didn't strike an emotional chord yet. And so it just talks more and more about that. And it goes on for about 26 minutes. So this is the original 16mm film that we asked Alex Cherian to remaster for the city so that we can have it for preservation purposes. So it really highlights how far we've come as a society and a community. So I'd like to hear your thoughts as to how you would like to best make known to the community. We could play it on our local access TV channel, Channel 27, or archive it onto the website. Those are just two of the options that are very feasible to do.
Can you make it like a YouTube video and then have a link to it, and then anyone goes to our website, they can then access it on the...
Yeah, this is actually a link on SFSU's website right now, so it's already online. We could definitely provide a link to this page for people to view it.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be great. I think of the Baylands, being developed, one of these days, and that there's, some kind of museum that talks about, how, just the transformation of the land and having this be, part of that, that knowledge, that learning of how things used to be, and how we've learned over the years that that type of living and throwing things away type lifestyle, it's not sustainable. Now we've come a long way. So, and you can already tell that we've come a long way, but there's still a lot more to do. But I don't know. You got some comments, Clark?
Yeah, I'd like to see it go on our channel on 27. I think it's a very educational piece, and I'd like to see a copy made up, a clean copy, and given to Michelle for sharing that with us. And,
we have that. Mm-hmm.
And perhaps the rest of the council and the community members, do want it. I wouldn't expect everybody would want it, but also put on our website. I think this is really, really educational, and I think we should send our schools some copies and share it with the children, because this is something that they may never see, but it really drives in that part about what Cliff is talking about sustainability, sustainable living, that this is what created this landmass. Mm-hmm. This is what's underneath all this dirt. People really need to understand that, and to kind of get a visual of something that, I know, Michelle knows, Ray knows, and seen firsthand that, a lot of people have, but unless you really saw it, you don't make that connection. And it's, I think it's a good way to make that connection. and educate our children. I think this was a wonderful program, and you know, I know we got another, was it a 2-minute clip or something? It was more geared towards Zero Point with no sound, and I don't know, maybe find a way of morphing that in. Kind of interesting.
The other,
Yeah.
the footage that you had. Okay. I will check with the executive producer at Cron just to make sure that we can make multiple copies. I told him that it would most likely be used on the TV channel, and he seemed to be okay with that because it was a community station.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, check and
wanna make sure.
and copyright.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, I'd really like to see Michelle at least get a copy. You know, if I'm not sure if you'd have to sign something, but you know, she shared that with me, and that kind of started this whole journey. And it's a great play. Really a great piece of work, actually. There was a whole series back in the 60s on this.
yeah, it's one of 55
Yeah.
that was filmed as part of their news and documentary department biography series.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat. One is just dedicated mostly to Brisbane. Okay.
Oh, so there's another one?
No, they filmed just different topics, but this is one of those 55.
Oh, one of the 55 that they did around the bay? Was that what?
I don't know if they all pertain to the Bay. Well, obviously the Bay Area, it's Cron 4 news and documentary, but as to the topics that the other 54 concentrate on, I'm not sure.
Okay. Do we know the filmmaker?
Yes, it was produced by Al Scolay, Leo Diner Films, which existed back in the 60s, and I try to go that route to find the original film or footage, but he's no longer around and his sons aren't either, so SFSU has a Leo Diner Memorial Fund or scholarship, so that's how we honed in on where the collection was. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great, good work.
All right, thanks, Carolyn.
Sure.
And then you have the next presentation as well.
Showed the picture of the tire dump out there.
Yes, I noticed that.
That's right. Yeah.
Why I really showed it to Clark.
That's what started our conversation.
I think it was huge.
Okay, I'm going to show you some pages from the Strong City, Strong State website. It's Brisbane's profile page, and this is a website that the California City Management Foundation and the League of California Cities came together to initiate early last year, and Council members Richardson brought it to our attention that the League was starting this program or this project of trying to compile profile pages for all 482 cities in the state, and for us to get working on it. So we did that, and we've been working with our regional affairs manager, Jessica Stanfill, on getting her the various elements that were requested so that they could put together this page. And so we chose 5 projects that showed the services that are provided in our city, and also ones that have to do with the pride that the residents feel in their city's history, traditions. And so the 5 are the 25th anniversary celebration of the Festival of Lights, the annual winter cleanup that's done each year, upgrading the city's SCADA system, or the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, preservation of open space, and the City Hall green parking lot, or the rain garden. And I'll just dim the lights again so you can see. This is the page from the Strong City, Strong State blog, and it highlights a couple of these success stories. The preservation of open space was another one, and winter cleanup, which I mentioned, in the 25th anniversary of the Festival of Lights. And clicking here brings us to Strong City, Strong State /city/Brisbane. And we have an overview of the city as it loads. We also have quotes from the business community and also key influentials in Brisbane. I contacted Ken Walker, the school board president and president of the Brisbane Youth Sports Association, Mitch Boole, CEO of the Brisbane Chamber of Commerce, Chad Carvey, dual principal of Brisbane Elementary School and Panorama Elementary, Larry Purcell, co-owner of Purcell Murray Company, and Freddie Beeman, vice president of client manager, or vice president / client manager of Bank of America. And so in the city testimonial section, there's quotes from them, and the success stories are illustrated in this section here. And so clicking on each of them brings me to a page that talks more about each one with pictures that illustrate it. And they also wanted to highlight the city council and the city manager that helps to oversee these various projects getting done. And so here's apologize for the slow loading. Okay, so we have pictures and a synopsis of our last Festival of Light celebration. And just want to show you the City Council page. It describes the Brisbane Council and the city manager relationship being very much like a football team, where the city council are like the coaching staff on the field. The city manager is the quarterback for the team, and the team are along the field trying to get that ball down the field. So they have that analogy on each of the city's various profile pages. And Brisbane was the very first city in San Mateo County to get their page up on the Strong City, Strong State website. We were launched on January 30th, and City of Burlingame launched that afternoon. So,
Caroline.
I wanted just to highlight that. And yeah, the measure of success would be, there is a count here, 170 views so far, so that would be a good indication of whether the public is checking out our page or different cities that are trying to get ideas for their own pages that will be going up in the future. But there's also scenes of the city that rotate through. There's 14 different photos. So just a snapshot of Brisbane and the elected officials and city manager and the projects. So a lot of this is, in terms of the copy, can be edited if you wanted to suggest anything in terms of projects, or maybe you would like to add a picture or anything. She's been very great to work with, the one who's been doing the page. So I'd like to take any feedback on as to whether anything you'd like to be added, and I can get that to her.
All right, council members? Okay.
Yeah, no, it's great. The only suggestion I have for adding things, I think it's really a good cross-section of what we're about, but I did notice that all the individuals of influence, I'm sure that Seppi and Terry noticed this, they're all men. And I think we need some women there.
We have one.
Well, not really. Where?
Amal Bensouda. If we go into the city testimonials
But not
page.
individuals of influence listed in the staff report.
Oh, yeah, so there were people that I was supposed to get quotes from, like also key influentials in the town, and then also ones who were going to be sent the press release to help disseminate that the Brisbane page had gone up. So one of the quotes that I had gotten came from Amal Bensouda, who's the new branch manager for Bank of America. So that,
Instead of Freddie Beeman?
well, Freddie Beeman was asked to be one of the people to send out the press release. And I've actually contacted Freddie today, as he's also the new chairperson for the Chamber of Commerce, if he could provide a quote. So once he does that, I'm going to shoot it over and have it added as well. Yeah, so I thought that originally it was going to be everyone would be shown on the page, either like the key influentials, would be, like their names would be listed along with their titles and emails, because that's what they asked for. But it turns out that they were going to use that just to send the press release so that they could disseminate it. So I thought, oh, well, since in my initial conversations with all of these people, I had said that it would be shown on the website, I wanted to follow through with that. So we'll get Freddie's on there, and I could add more quotes from women if you would like to suggest any. Be more than willing to.
Any other comments from council members?
I agree with Ray. It's probably good to do a little bit more diverse.
Yeah. No, I think this is great, Seppi. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and glad Carolyn was quick to have Brisbane be the first city in San Mateo County to do it. Now, you had mentioned that this is something that you can add new things and expand it, and
Living document.
yeah. So the stories. So there's that opportunity to add more stories as we create them.
Right.
And the 5 stories that you had put in here, they were to highlight things that have recently happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Caroline.
You're welcome.
All righty. So next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Right?
I'd like to remove for questions items D and E, and prepared to move the approval of the others if there are no other.
I just wanted to do a short thing on A.
A? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Clerk.
Okay to move approval of B and C?
Yep, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Aye.
Yeah, and item A on the first page for the 2 amateur boxing champions. I just want to note that they were actually world champions. They both won world championships in Kansas City, Missouri, and I think it's worth noting because I don't believe ever had a world champion.
Yeah, that's great.
And just adding that in there, I'd like to move approval of the minutes.
Of A.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a second?
Sure. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So, D and E, Ray?
I was asked a couple of questions on the investment presentation, and so if I may ask the finance director a couple of questions. I wonder if you would be so kind as to give a sense of all the different amounts that are listed here by these different categories of bonds and so forth. Would you explain what the nature of all of them are? There are not that many that have figures by them.
You're talking about the area that says other investments?
Right.
Sure. These are various governmental agencies that we buy bonds from. Listed on the bottom of the page is what the initials are for. So FNMA is Fannie Mae, FMHLB is the Federal Home Loan Bank, FFCB is the Federal Farm Credit Bank, then you have Fannie Mae and FHLB again, Federal Home Loan Bank. So the first column after that is the date that we made the investment. The second column is the amount that the investment was for. So in each of these cases, we invested $500,000. The third column is what the carry amount of the investment was. So the first column is the face amount. The next column is what we paid for it. So in the case of the FHLB that we purchased on May 11th of 2011, we bought it at a discount. So when it matures, or if it's called early, we will collect the full $500,000. The next column, market value of the investment, is as of October 31st, what that investment was worth. The last column is what the coupon interest rate. The next column is the coupon interest that we're earning on it, and then the maturity date. These are all agencies that are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. So currently, I think they're at AA plus rating, since that's what the federal government is at on S&P, and then AAA on the other two rating agencies. I don't invest in things that are not backed by the federal government. There are a number of cities that will invest in private corporations. Our policy allows us to invest in corporations at the A level of investment security. And I just don't think that that gives us the security that we would like to have. You know, as I tell people, Enron was a strong A rating right up until the moment it wasn't. And I just don't have the amount of time to look at that. And I think the other one was Morgan Stanley. It was a very strong A-rated bond, and right up until the moment it went bankrupt. So from that perspective, I invest very conservatively.
Morgan Stanley or Lehman Brothers?
It was at Lehman Brothers, you're right.
Morgan Stanley's still around, but they didn't
Yes.
do too well either.
No, but
It was Lehman Brothers.
right.
So, I mean, from that perspective, I'm trying to keep the city's money in very conservative investments. I think we give up a little bit of interest that way, but at the same time, I think the security and the liquidity is a stronger emphasis for our city than, you know, trying to get every single dime out of the investments.
Okay, what about the rest of the figures down the column there?
So the ones that are for the bonds.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the amount of money in each of the different bonds that we have outstanding that's held by the trustee, and the type of account it is held in. So if you look at the Brisbane Financing Public Authority 2001 Series A bonds, we have $2,063,000 in the reserve fund. This is part of what we were talking about with the redevelopment agency, about having money in reserve. So all of these are the different kinds of funds that the trustee holds for us, and the amount of money that is in each of those types of funds. So going through the list, and improvements is the amount of money that we had put into the bond in the initial sale of the bond to build the project with. The reserve fund is what is required by the bondholders to ensure that we can make the payment on the bond. Normally, the reserve is the highest amount of a bond payment for an individual year outstanding. The revenue fund is another placeholder where the trustee puts money when it's sold. The expense fund is the amount that we need to pay off for the purchase. The principal and the interest is the amount that we need to put aside for interest. Those are only used when the bonds are when we're actually paying the bond, the 6-month bond payment, the interest and the expense. And periodically, you may see a little bit of money in there if there's some money left over.
What's the Northeast Ridge assessment?
That was we have an assessment district on the Northeast Ridge that was done at the time that the project was built. It's to pay for a number of the private improvements. It was sold through the city, but it is backed by the assessments of the individual homeowners. So it's part of their property tax bill that they pay an annual assessment. We get the money and then we pay it to the trustee.
Are the trustees the same for all of these?
Yes, they're all Bank of New York.
All Bank of New York?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Welcome.
Move receipt of the monthly investment report.
Can I, may I, I'm sorry, follow up a question.
Sure.
Bank of New York is made up of a lot of private, very high-end investors, and they hold many mortgages. And Bank of New York has not given, from what I understand, not even one home mortgage modification to the mortgages that they hold, and they allow people to go default, lose their home, rather than helping them. Because they're not Fannie Mae, Fannie Mac, absolutely none of them. And many people that they hold the mortgage, the homes have been lost. And now that I hear about Bank of New York, it really makes me very uncomfortable to know that we're dealing with a bank that rather see people out of their homes than showing even slightest compassion. And I do have good authority to say what I'm saying. What would be our recourse? I want to do business with people that respect people's lives and well-being.
I would actually have to check with our bond counsel on what we have held in reserves, because it's set up through the initial bond documents that Bank of New York was the trustee. I could check with our bond counsel to see if we have any recourse of that.
I think we should really give ourselves immediate action to do what we need to do to get out of Bank of New York. I think we should do that, right? Not to our detriment, not to Brisbane detriment, but I think we need to stand for people's right at the same time.
I just caution you that I think we need to do a fair amount of research with regards to the effects of changing the bank.
Sure.
If
Sure.
indeed that could. So we'll do that analysis and bring it
Sure.
back to you.
And I can give you further information, the information that I have.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, but the issue for us is really whether or not we can change, and then what the impacts of that change would be, and that's the information we bring to the council.
Well, I agree with what Seppi's saying, if all that's true, that, but maybe instead of, finding out what the facts are first, and then, I would certainly think that maybe sending a letter under the guise of our mayor of saying that we're not pleased with their practices, if that's true. If it's true that they are putting people out and not remortgaging their homes, I think from a political sense, it would be appropriate to send the money that, or send a letter that we're not happy, we're investing with you, but this doesn't meet our community values. And, in the future, if we can find a way getting out of that, we will, unless they change their business practices.
That's exactly what we need to do. Thank you.
So, Stuart, have we always just defaulted to the Bank of New York as the trustee for the bonds, or is that something that we didn't really choose, we just had the bond?
No, I mean, we can go out at the time that we sell bonds, we can look for other trustees. The question is just that we have sold, since we sold these bonds and the Bank of New York was the one that we were using at that time, it was easy enough to do. I think the times, as Sepia said, the times have changed over the last 5 years. We haven't sold bonds in the last 5 years. So, I mean, we may want, I can check with our bond counsel to see what recourse we have about what we hold at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's no problem. But we haven't sold bonds. I think 09 was the last one we sold, which was the second one for the City Hall, and the first one for the City Hall was already the Bank of New York as a trustee, so it was just a natural inclination, and I think that was just at the beginning of the financial crisis. So, I mean, I understand the desire of Councilwoman Richardson and Councilmember Conway, and we can look to see what we can do.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we did have a motion on D. Do I have a second?
Second.
Indeed.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Letter E. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, this is about the co-sponsorship with the Brisbane Dance Workshop, which of course I'm fully in favor of. But I had a couple of questions that sort of minor things, but I felt that I needed to get them sorted out before I wanted to just vote for it. The first thing is the total amount of support. To me, there seems like there's a discrepancy.
There's an error.
There's an error.
It
yeah.
should be $2,242.
Right, so I'm right about that. That
You
was
are
an
right.
error. Yeah, okay. So the total amount is $2,242.
Correct.
Okay, we corrected that. That struck me as, what? Wait a minute, doesn't add up.
The math didn't work.
And the other thing was, I just wanted to ask about the alcoholic beverages liability policy. Who carries that, or do they have to carry that, or is that a really big concern, or what's the situation?
Do you want me to try, Clay?
Yeah, although are you asking that in just general, because this event will...
Well, I noticed that it says here that they're going to have alcoholic beverages. It says yes.
In the staff report, it says no.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's checked yes on the application.
That's, that's exactly
So
right.
that's where I'm trying to figure out, so what's what?
Well, I mean, there must have been an error in terms of checking that. Yeah, they did, but...
Can I make a clarification? In
Sure.
the past, they haven't sold alcohol at that event, but I know they have potluck afterwards.
Perhaps that's what they're, I don't know.
Right, there's a difference between selling it and serving it.
Right.
And what we do is we require any person who's renting or any agency that rents Mission Blue to purchase insurance for that specific reason, for that specific occurrence. So there is a cost that we sell insurance for with alcohol and without alcohol at the event. So it's the responsibility of the person who's renting the facility to purchase the appropriate kind of insurance.
But the way I read it, it says that even if you're asking for donations, which for the whole event, then that triggers, if you're even not selling it, that still triggers the need for liquor liability, according to what I read here anyway. Am I right about that? Or I just want to get clarification as to what they are or are not required to do.
Yeah, I believe that they will get the alcohol. If they're serving alcohol, they'll get the alcohol insurance as well. And that's just a separate charge above and beyond the base liability insurance that is purchased.
Okay.
And we've gone through this with BDW before, and they've always purchased the right types of insurance that they need.
Okay.
Even if it's for one day,
Yeah.
they can get that. Sometimes
Right.
Yeah.
their homeowner's policy does not allow that, and they have to go to a third-party insurance provider.
Right, and in fact, if you go back to the previous previous one, you look at it, we have a liability. There is one of our funds that we have is an in and out fund for people who purchase insurance through a third party through us. So most people, it's easier just to purchase it through the city. There's a third-party policy that we purchase on behalf of the individual.
Okay, so that clarifies my questions. Happy to move approval.
All right, we have a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's the consent calendar. Now on to the public hearing. Consider introduction of ordinance number 567. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. The zoning ordinance sets forth a number of procedures related to the processing of planning permits. These procedures address the timelines, permit expiration dates, time extensions, appeal deadlines, among other requirements. As the zoning ordinance has been amended incrementally over time and provisions of state law changed, a number of procedures established in the zoning ordinance are now either internally inconsistent or inconsistent with the provisions of state law. So one of the purposes of this particular amendment was to clean up some of those inconsistencies and bring the city's zoning ordinance in compliance with state law. However, it also provides the opportunity to address a couple of policy issues regarding the appropriate length of time for planning permits to be active, as well as procedures for considering time extensions. And those are kind of the policy issues the Planning Commission addressed, as well as the other more mechanical changes as part of their hearing in November, and did recommend approval of the packet you have in front of you. So I'm going to go through the policy issues. First one is a term of approval. The term of approval varies among different types of planning permits, variances, conditional use permits, design permits. All have variable length of times that the permit's good for. That creates some level of inconsistency if a project requires multiple planning permits, one that has a 1-year deadline, others that have 2-year deadlines, et cetera. So part of the issue was to try to clarify and simplify and make the permit deadlines uniform among various types of permits. Another issue that the current code doesn't recognize is the fact that the state can has a unilateral ability to extend subdivision map approvals. And so again, if you have a planning approval that runs with a map, the state will extend the map approval, but the local planning approval isn't necessarily extended. And again, that creates a level of confusion and uncertainty as well. So addressing those two issues specifically, the Planning Commission recommended a standard 3-year term of approval for planning applications. And they also recommended language that provides for the automatic extensions of projects with tentative maps where the state has statutorily extended the tentative map. So those were the two, I think, the significant recommendations the Planning Commission made. Further, also recognize another provision in state law that if you process a development agreement that can run for a longer term than a typical planning entitlement, that the development agreement will govern the term of the approval. So that was the last sort of term of approval caveat in that language. Another policy issue related to the time extensions. Again, currently all time extensions for permits require subsequent Planning Commission action. There's been some confusion over time extensions in process here. There's typically time extensions represent an opportunity to determine whether there are changes in the project or the regulatory environment or the physical environment that would warrant a relook at the project. They're typically not viewed as a new project approval. And unfortunately, the findings in the city zoning ordinance are a little unclear in that regard. In some cases, for certain projects, there are no findings for approving time extensions that are set forth in the zoning code. In other cases, the findings are the same as for the original approval, which arguably means the whole approval should be up to of reconsideration, which again is somewhat inconsistent with the intent of a time extension. So the intent was to clarify the findings for time extensions, which would be to define that the extension could be granted if there are no changes to circumstances or environmental conditions warranting either a more comprehensive review or new conditions of approval. So to clarify those findings and make them again consistent among various project types. The other issue was who would grant a time extension in those findings. The original recommendation to the Planning Commission was that such time extensions be subject to zoning administrator review and approval. That would be appealable to the council. The zoning administrator would also have the ability to refer that time extension to the Planning Commission. So there were opportunities for review. The Planning Commission, when they reviewed this particular amendment, didn't feel comfortable that the zoning administrator should always be in the position of granting the time extension, although they felt there would be cases where it would be appropriate. So what they did as recommended by the Planning Commission, would require the Planning Commission, as part of an original approval, to determine if a subsequent time extension could be granted on a case-by-case basis. So there's no hard and fast line that all variances could be subject to a zoning administrator time extension or not. They would individually, on a case-by-case basis, make that determination. So again, there are two different paths for the council to take if you choose to amend this language. One would be the Planning Commission's recommendation, or one would be a more of a straight line, as originally recommended to the Commission, to allow for zoning administrator consideration of time extensions. The last issue, that was timing in terms of how long an extension could be granted. The recommendation was to allow a maximum 2 years for a time extension. So that would lead for a total project life of 5 years, 3 years for the original approval, 2 years for an extension. So that was the maximum lifetime for project approval under the approach suggested. There's some more language changes related to appeal periods and public notification. Again, they're primarily to reflect that requirements under the Permit Streamlining Act in terms of the city's obligations to process permits in a timely way, and notification requirements to make sure they're consistent with state law as well in terms of the distance, a 300-foot notification for applications is required by state law. So with that, staff is recommending approval of that the council introduce ordinance 567, and I'd be glad to answer any questions the council has.
Clerk?
Yeah, John, even though this would be for 5 years max, kind of indicated that the state legislature, and we came across this when we were looking at the Sierra Point project for the LEED Gold, the state can really come in and override regardless what number of years we choose. Is that correct?
For a subdivision permit, they can extend the life of the map. I'll defer to Hal. There's some question when a planning approval that's not subject to the state's jurisdiction, the state doesn't have the ability necessarily to extend local approvals, so I'll defer to Hal.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to clean up. It's unclear. The state has on several occasions extended the life of tentative maps, but they did not mention or attempt to address the life of any zoning approval as part of that. So we ended up with a disconnect of a person who did the whole process, and we actually encourage people to process developments as a package so that all of the approvals are considered at the same time. So you would deal with your tentative map along with whatever zoning you need, like a use permit or variance or whatever it may be. So if your tentative map is extended, then all of a sudden you end up with an extended life on that, but your zoning has not been clearly extended, so we're trying to correct that situation.
I see, yeah. Okay.
And let me just add that the state has only done that when there's been a period of economic duress. On every occasion when they've done it, because in their judgment, the economy has not allowed tentative maps to go forward. Local jurisdictions, by and large, can't amend their zoning ordinances retroactively like that, or their subdivision ordinances, to give more life to tentative maps. So this is an effort by the state to keep projects alive that have gone through the process, have obtained a tentative map approval, and preventing that from expiring when economic circumstances would not allow the project to go forward.
Such as the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. But that's, but prior to that, I don't think the state really adopted legislation like that. So it's been kind of an extraordinary economy that has prompted the state to extend tentative maps like that.
So it's only a singular adoption by the legislature? It's not an
They've only, yeah, when they've done it, it's been for an extension for a specified period. And there's nothing ongoing about it. So the last extension would have taken maps that had not yet expired and given them additional life, but it wouldn't have done anything beyond that. So if they want to do it again, in fact, they had to do it a second time, because the first time they did it, the period's expired, and they wanted to give even more time. So those are always one-time extensions.
Okay. All right.
So if the economy approves, they may not have occasion to do it again, but, because it created problems for everybody when they did that, and we're just trying to correct it now rather than relying on the state to clean it up.
Relying on the state to clean it up.
Could I piggyback on that?
Sure.
John Sawicki said something about the level of the project and as to whether the state legislature has jurisdiction over smaller local approvals vis-a-vis bigger ones that involve tentative map for a subdivision. Is there a line that's drawn there, or does everything have a tentative map, and so it's all-encompassing, or are there things that are exempt?
I don't think it's based on size, because when they extended tentative maps, they extended all tentative maps.
All of them.
As I recall, it was not, you could have a tentative map for a lot split.
Right.
And you got extended. So it was the nature of the approval, and the subdivision law is, in the Subdivision Map Act.
Right.
And that's all they addressed, but there also is a state planning law.
Right.
And some of the provisions of that planning law deal with timeframes, they just didn't address it.
Okay.
So I don't think it's dependent on it being a larger or smaller project.
Okay.
And in fact, in our experience, we're running into this more in terms of smaller projects. Someone could have a single-family residence or a 2 or 3 lot residential development. We've had more of those than the big developments. And those are the people who we want to encourage to go forward, and they're running into problems because their times are expiring and they're out of sync, basically.
Is that it, Ray? Do you have any other questions?
Well, I got lots of other questions, but
All right,
I'll
Tara?
defer to my colleagues. Oh, just piggybacking on that.
So on 1728-110, and the language says period or periods of extensions, does that mean people can go, the permit process goes through multiple extensions?
No. 1728-110, it would be subsection B, permit may be extended for a period or period of time not exceeding 2 years. So you could do it in a 1-year increment, or you could do a 2-year time extension, but the operative word being not to exceed 2 years.
So, but each extension could be up to 2 years?
No, it's a single extension up to 2 years. You could do 1 year or 2 years.
Then why would the wording be for a period or periods?
Because you could go in 1-year increments or a 2-year increment. That would be 2 different time extensions for 1 year each, or 1 single 2-year extension.
Wouldn't it be more clear to have the or periods taken out of the language?
Sure.
You suggest moving that, Terry?
Well, I would think it would make it more clear if that is the,
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, makes sense.
If we said an aggregate total, would that help?
well, I think it's fairly clear if it says permit may be extended for a period of time not exceeding 2 years.
Right.
Hence making it 5 years, the whole process.
Right.
Right. The original 3 years and the extension 1 time.
Correct.
Right.
Makes it clear.
Yeah.
That's fine.
We'll just do it 2 years.
And then on variances, on 1746040B, I'm concerned with the zoning administrator. I think that's probably not the first place it appears, but I think that there are things that should be, when it comes to variances, I think that they can change quickly on what's has impact, and so I think the role of the zoning administrator should be limited, because those are the things that would slip through the cracks if members of the public had questions with an extension or an appeal process. And I think it's difficult when it's handled through zoning administration.
Where's that at, Terry? 17 what?
1746040B, and I think this is actually more the result than the actual administrator roles. I think I might not be quite clear on when a zoning administrator has the authority for extensions.
Again, there are certain provisions in the zoning ordinance that aren't subject to modification here that specify which kind of variances can be subject to planning commission or zoning administrator review and approval. This isn't setting any new procedure. This is just indicating that if the procedure allows for, whether it's planning commission or zoning administrator approval, this is the process.
There are some minor modifications where the zoning administrator would have authority, and then there are variances that can only be granted by the planning commission. We can certainly provide the council with a list of which is which, but we're not changing any of those provisions. They're already there, but the generalization would be the zoning administrator handles some minor items. Very often you'd find a modification of a standard that the administrator can deal with. I can't recall specifics right offhand, but we would be certainly happy to give you a list of which ones they are.
Being new to the council and not being on the planning commission, I would love to have some clarification of that. And then if we are rewriting this ordinance, we might as well make it right the first time rather than come back and modify it again. So I would like some clarification on that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, John, would you have an example of it? Because I think it's something that's probably
Over an oversized fence, for example, an oversized wall. Those are examples. There's certain exceptions for setbacks of accessory buildings. If there's certain criteria, they're under a certain height and a certain setback, those can be approved through a zoning administrator process or referred to the planning commission, but those are the kind of fairly minor improvements that are associated with typically single-family residences. There's a more streamlined zoning administrator process. If anything, for example, you had a new home, so you had or something that was subject to a design permit, not that all homes are subject to design permit, but something that would be subject to design permit, again, the application for the design permit would be subject to planning commission review, and any related permits, like setback exceptions or variances, that all be packaged together for planning commission review as well. So you're really talking about typically minor modifications to existing structures.
and basically the reasoning of that is not to really clog the system.
Well, it's planning commission time, but and John can correct me, but I think it's also an element of cost. If you're going before the planning commission, you're going to have a public hearing expense that the property owner will have to bear, plus the additional time required to get on the agenda and go through the public hearing and everything else. So I think the intent was on minor things like that, it's going to be quicker and more economical for the property owner to deal with the zoning administrator. Normally, those provisions will also involve notice to the adjacent properties Whereas if you have a public hearing with the Planning Commission, you're looking at a
300
radius
feet.
of 300 feet, which becomes a fairly substantial expense. So, you know, it's cost, convenience, and time, I think, that prompted that. Like I said, we'll be happy to give you a list of what types of applications would have zoning administrator approval authority.
So on a follow-up question, if an item goes to the zoning administrator for approval, only the immediate property owners get notification of that?
Within the 300?
No, it depends on the particular item, but just by way of example, it might say all of the surrounding properties would receive notice. So if you're next door, in the back, across the street, whatever. But you don't have to give a notice to everyone within a radius of 300 feet, which could become a very expensive proposition. But the people who would be likely to see it, and that would be the adjacent properties, you know, would normally get a notice. I'm not aware of any approval at the zoning administrator level where there's no
There is
notice.
not.
There's no notice to at least the people around that property. So there's always some form of notice. I think the issue is how extensive do you want the notice to be. And if we're dealing with, you know, a tool shed in the back that's going to be too close to the property line, normally the only people concerned with that is the property on the other side and the properties on either side who can see it. So it's that kind of a thing that we're really aiming at for that type of approval.
Well, the other thing that it may affect is setting the precedent for setbacks to be moved and become accepted.
Well, it still is a variance, and there are still findings that the zoning administrator would have to make. So it's not simply a matter of submitting an application. You still have to make the findings. Those decisions are all appealable to the Planning Commission. So it's really using the same standards for a variance, but having the process, the approving authority, designated as the zoning administrator as opposed to the Planning Commission, but it doesn't change the need to make the findings that are required to grant the variance in the first place.
You know, if I may, Terry, I just want to get clarification, John. So there are some variances that do not need to go before the Planning Commission, or do all variances need to go before the Planning Commission?
We're talking about they're called actually minor modifications that are zoning administrator items.
And that's something that we already currently have in place.
Yes, those are procedures.
Okay.
Terry, you just comfortable with getting the list then, and you and that, or?
I would like the list, and I'm wondering if that can be so that if someone does have a problem and wants to appeal it, that we don't have an always-on appeal deadline. I read the letter from Dana Dilworth, and I think that it's important that we do recognize that some of what might be minor to the zoning administrator may not be minor to the neighborhood. So I would like to see some safeguards in that.
There is a 15-day appeal period. Are you suggesting a longer appeal period, or what exactly?
No, I think I'm thinking more of the notification that the decision's been made. How we go about that, ensure that people know about the decision, the zoning administrator's decision, that something's been made or done.
Okay.
You mean like
Not quite sure how we can.
A follow-up to the notice to the property owners in that 300-foot radius?
That might be a good solution.
Of saying, okay, we didn't receive any appeals from this property owners in this 300 radius, and so the zoning administrator then sends out a letter, a follow-up that this is decision that was made.
I think just so that there's notification made somewhere that it's available for people to know what decisions have been made.
Okay.
Yeah,
I need to
one
get
of
clarification.
the things that Clay and I talked about, and I figured we would just talk about it during our council discussion, but was, perhaps when the zoning administrator makes his findings, that there's, that making of findings perhaps is on the planning commission's agenda. It's just an item that
Communicated.
identifies that, yes, okay, this finding was made for this particular variance. Planning commission knows about it. The planning commission wants to appeal it. They have that right, but more than likely they're going to say, okay, thanks for the information.
I think that could be a good solution.
Okay. That's, yeah.
I think that would be a lot more workable than giving a notice to 300 feet.
Yes,
and right back
absolutely.
where
No, I
it started
understand
from in
that.
terms of cost. It would involve some delay on the applicant's part, but at least you have a follow-up notice to somebody, and if they want to bring it up and look and consider it, they can. Now, the zoning administrator on his own initiative can refer a matter to the commission if he thinks that there's some controversy involved or there's some neighborhood objections. But again, I come back to the point that the list of things that are subject to zoning administrator approval is a list that you folks determine, not the zoning administrator. That's in the code right now, and it's in the code as an ordinance that has allowed that process, and it's perfectly legitimate to, take another look at it. You may want to change the list, but the zoning administrator does not have authority on any variance that comes across his desk as to whether he's going to decide it or send it to the commission. That authority has to already be there as determined by the city council through the adoption of the ordinance.
Thank you.
All right, so you still have the floor. If you have more questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes. Okay,
Mama.
Seppi?
Yes, I do. Just quickly, we had this thing about when an applicant wants to appeal something, they go before the planning commission, but before that, they make the fee, they pay the fee to appeal. And the appeal with the city council can be waived for the fee that they have to pay. The reason we have this section here that the council can, two council can sign it and waive the fee, it's because that we already collect the fee for the appeal when they go before the planning commission. So,
No, that's,
okay, this is what I wanted to understand, because if we're talking about raising rent or whatever fees for organizations such as BW and so forth, wouldn't we want to look at this, right, and waiving the fee by the signature of two council if we are in need of money? Maybe these are the areas that we can look at, and not to allow two council members to sign the waiver, so the person that is appealing to the city council not to pay the fee. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I can get some clarification from Clay.
What you're basically saying is that the council could not appeal an item to the council. That they would have to be by the applicant or a member of the community, or because that's the procedure now, is that members of the community will often come to council members.
Right.
You need two council members, and then the council members are actually the appellants.
Right. And when they do that, the fee is waived.
Right.
Correct. There's no fee for the council to appeal.
That's correct.
Right, because the council members are doing it.
Can I,
It's
Can I
kind of
make-
a conundrum.
can I make a comment on that?
I think it should stay in place, that part, where two council members have that ability, so. But
I would think that there's different cases for the council to want to look at a decision that was made, and without the waiver of the fee or the ability to do that, it may make it where a citizen could not file an appeal because of monetary reasons. And that's making it a pay-for-play kind of option, and I think that shouldn't be taken out of the council's hands to be able to do that.
I'm trying to get clarification on the reason that the fee would have been waived had to do with the fee that they pay to appeal the planning commission, but the two have no relation then. They're two separate.
There is no appeal fee paid at the time of the application being submitted. You only get into an appeal fee after the commission has made a decision.
Planning commission.
I think we got two separate issues here. One is the ability of the council to initiate its own appeal, and secondly, the appeal fee that's charged to a private party if they wish to appeal. Now, what may happen on occasion is you folks may be under pressure from people to initiate an appeal because they don't want to pay the appeal fee, or you may have issues that you're legitimately concerned about that you want to have it brought up and looked at by the council. If you feel as a matter of policy that the fee is too large, irrespective of what the council may want to bring up on its own initiative, you can always reconsider the appeal fee and make your own, set an amount that you're comfortable with. So that's a separate issue, and it is an issue as to whether the appeal fee itself is prohibitive because of its amount. And if it is, will that increase the number of occasions when people will be coming directly to council members to initiate their own appeal just because they can't afford to pay the appeal fee, and as to avoid having to come to you and ask for a waiver of that fee. So,
John?
If I could, I guess it was about maybe 6 months ago or so, Caroline brought in the planning fee schedule for review, and then one of the issues was cost recovery.
Right.
And another issue was this particular question of the appeal.
Right.
And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but is my understanding or my recollection that the appeal fee was dropped significantly to minimize that financial burden on somebody to file an appeal. It didn't take away the council's ability for 2 members to set it for appeal, but the appeal fee was reduced to try to address that particular concern about financial hardship for someone. So you can relook at it again, but it was looked at probably 6 to 8 months ago.
And that's where I was leading to, that we have already reduced the fee tremendously, so we don't create financial hardship for people. And then the council has authorization here to even waive that low fee. Do we want to look at that?
You have authorization to waive the
Just
fee?
to be
Part of the
yeah,
fee,
clear,
the planning fee.
You're not waiving the fee. You as a council, 2 members of the council have the authority to appeal to the full council, and there's no cost to the council members to do that.
Right.
So the effect, I understand that the effect is it probably feels like it's being waived, but that's not quite what's happening.
Okay, because I thought that it was a waiver, but that's my understanding. Okay, thank you for
Perhaps it's the same
clarification.
effect.
Good, fine, I'm okay with that. If you don't mind, then, on the following page in the zoning administrator with the variance, on item B, 17.56.050, item B, it talks about the zoning administrator, what do you call it? May refer any applicants for a variance directly to the planning commission without holding a hearing or without making a decision thereon. When you go before the planning commission, it's a public hearing, that's a public, so what we mean here for a special hearing, is that?
It's typically, that's applied if there's, for example, great neighborhood controversy about a project, even though it's kind of local and it's small scale, and you have a number of interested parties who wish to speak, the zoning administrator has the right to just forward it on to the planning commission as a more appropriate venue for something that's not just kind of a routine neighbor-to-neighbor sort of issue. It has larger implications, and so the referral is to kind of put it in front of the appropriate hearing body for the complexity or scope of the issue as a wider community issue than a typical, neighbor-to-neighbor issue that the zoning administrator would be more likely deal with.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Ray?
Yeah, I have just some questions I'd appreciate some clarification on. First question I have is the difference between just a plain old tentative map and a vesting tentative map.
A vesting tentative map was an animal created by state law some years ago. It basically says that once you have your tentative map approval, then you're not subject to any later changes in the general plan or zoning ordinances with regard to land use policies. So, for example, if you got a vesting tentative map, you basically get vested rights to proceed with the development in accordance with that map, and the city can't change the rules on you later on. What had happened is, what prompted all this is there was occasions where somebody went through the whole process, got their tentative map, and then the city went back and rezoned the property to something else. And so the original project that was approved by the tentative map could not be built. And the courts ruled that until you actually pulled a building permit and spent substantial funds in reliance on that permit, you didn't have any vested rights. And that struck the legislature as being fundamentally unfair, so they adopted this whole vesting tentative map procedure that essentially said if you ask for a tentative map and you're granted or vesting tentative map and that's what you're granted, then basically you know that you've got assurance that you can build that project at least for the length of the vesting tentative map. So the city can't go back and change the rules on you. That's really the only difference between that and any other type of vesting, any other type of tentative map. As a practical matter, any developer now is going to routinely ask for a vesting tentative map because it doesn't cost them any more to ask for it, and the city's process is exactly the same one way or the other. So it's simply intended to give the developer the assurance that once they've gone through the whole process and they have their map, and they can proceed with their project in accordance with that map.
So,
and by the way, that's a developer option.
Right.
If somebody asks for a vesting tentative map, the city can't say, no, we refuse to give it to you. It's an entitlement that's provided by state law.
So that they get a vesting tentative map for the same period of time?
Yes.
So it would be 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's vesting, the question came up, okay, so if anything has changed, it would raise a question about the 2-year extension. Does the vesting tentative map say, okay, does it make any difference whether anything has changed, you still got it, or not?
You mean if there's an extension?
Right. How does it affect the extension process?
It's extended as a vesting tentative map.
But can you change anything if there are changes in zoning law or state law or environmental circumstances? Those are the things that are findings you have to make in order to raise questions about the extension or changing the nature of the extension or requirements for the extension.
Well, if the state law...
Does the vesting tentative map really put restrictions on that?
If it's extended, I think it's extended based on its original approval. So the answer to your question would probably be no, but that was the intention of the state legislature, that once you have your map, you should have some assurance that you're going to continue to have those entitlements, even if the city adopts some different ordinances in the meantime.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. My only kind of caveat to that would be, I think it's one thing if the city were to adopt regulations that were clearly inconsistent with the vested aspects of the project in terms of the lot size or the setback or whatever they got vested for. I think that's kind of out of bounds. But if there were changes in environmental conditions on the ground and environmental regulations, in my mind, those would still be subject to the same kind of reanalysis or reopener whether it was a vesting map or a straight tentative map. You'd still have to analyze those conditions.
I gave you an incomplete answer because I'm really thinking in terms of land use policies. A vesting tentative map does not lock in your building regulations.
Okay.
So, for example, if someone had a vesting tentative map and in the meantime the city adopted a green building ordinance, that's a building regulation. What you're protected on are land use policies.
Okay.
So we couldn't take a residential property and say we're going to rezone it to commercial. But we can take a residential project and say you need to comply with the current building code requirements because you're not vested with regard to that. And even development agreements don't provide you with any vested rights with regard to building regulations and health and safety regulations. So if those change, then you need to comply with the current regulations. And I'm sorry I gave you
And Ray, if I
wrong answer there.
Back on that. So under the expiration of plan development permit, under letter A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences down, it talks about the project becomes invalid under the California Building Code. So if there were changes to the building code, then during that time period before construction began, then
you always need to comply with the building code regulations in effect as of the time you submit your application for a building permit, which is going to be considerably later than when you submitted your application for a tentative map or a variance or a use permit.
Okay, and that, that was the question I had for Clay, and I think you answered it. If the city had updated its green building ordinance, then unless you had a development agreement,
well, no, because even the development agreements that we've always prepared say that
whatever
on building regulations, you need to comply with the current regulations. The only way you really protect yourself against those kind of changes is to go in, get the permit, and build the project.
Start building, absolutely.
I mean, once you pulled the permit, then...
You're talking about building permit?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
All right, there you go, Ray.
Okay, great, that helps. There's several occasions in the language in which it says, like under the expiration of design permit 1742-060, it says design permit shall expire in 3 years, and then there's a parentheses, unless a different period of time is designated by the approving body. And that appears several times, and it seems like kind of a loophole, and so I guess, is there a state law reason for that, or why are we doing that, and who is the approving body? It's not clear to me.
Well, the approving body would be whichever is the Planning Commission, or on appeal, the City Council. That would be the approving body, the local approving body. There's nothing to do with state regulation at all, so that's a local decision. In terms of...
Why do we have that in there?
And it's certainly your discretion. You could remove it. I think it was provide the Planning Commission typically some latitude if there's some extenuating circumstance one way or the other that they want to either approve a lesser or a greater time. But, again, that it certainly is something that's subject to your removal. And if the idea part of this is to provide some certainty, regulatory certainty, absolutely, I would concur with that particular observation.
We might have had in mind a shorter time, but
yeah,
all I would tell you is that that's not from state law, so it's whatever you want to do.
Okay. So I'm skeptical about that for the reasons suggested.
You want to remove it, that clause?
Unless I can hear a good argument for keeping it in.
Remove it.
Yeah. It's in several places.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another procedure that strikes me as a little bit difficult to follow. And I'm now looking at 1742-065 extensions. And it says that a person has 10 days to submit a request for a hearing. But then it says the hearing's got to be held within 15 days from the time that the approval was made, which, as I understand it, means there's only a 5-day period in between.
Yeah, that language,
That's kind of tight.
I have to confess, when I was looking through this language again, Mr. Toon isn't here today to talk about this particular provision, but it's actually not within 15 days. It's not less than 15 days from the hearing, or from the 10-day notice period, or from the date of the mailing. So it's actually be a minimum of 5 days distance. And I think in terms of practicality, what happens if the zoning administrator received an objection within the 10 days, then it would be set for hearing within whatever's an appropriate length of time it takes to set a meeting. Another 5 to 10 to 15 days. It's not within 15 days, it's
But the language doesn't seem to say that to me.
Yeah, it's
There are several places where this appears, and it reads to me as if the person has up to 10 days, and then you have to hold a hearing within 15 days from the same beginning date, which means there's only 5 days within which you can hold the hearing. That's how I read it anyway. Now, maybe that's not what's intended, but that's how it comes across to me.
I would agree it's not very clear, but I would point you out to under B, the second to last sentence. See, the notice shall advise any person have 10 days from the date of the mailing of the notice to submit a written request for a hearing.
Which shall be held not less than 15 days from the date of mailing the notice.
Yeah, shall be held not less than 15 days.
Right.
Not less than 15 days, not within 15 days, not
Right.
less than 15
But
days.
not less than 15 days.
Not less than.
Not less than.
Right.
It could be, that would probably be more clear.
Right.
Yeah, from the request, it'd probably be more clear.
Right.
Which we could change that. I'd be happy to make that change.
Okay.
I agree with that.
And then in the next paragraph C, talks about the zoning administrator may refer any extension application to the planning commission for a decision thereon if the zoning administrator is unable to make the required finding. So why do you say may?
Because the other option the zoning administrator would retain is to deny the extension. If he can't make the findings, he could easily, and then somebody, the project proponent, could appeal that zoning administrator determination. So that would allow for denial, but certainly not. If you can't make the findings, you couldn't approve it, but you could certainly deny it or refer it.
So that's the reason for the flexibility. Okay. Back to this issue of when things need to be, particularly extensions, need to be brought back to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission wanted to do it on a case-by-case basis. And you're saying that, just let the zoning administrator decide. But it seemed to me we were talking before about kind of an in-between position, whereby, we're talking about putting the decisions that the zoning administrator have made as a public information on, let's say, the Planning Commission's agenda. Just these are decisions that have been made. Probably could go on the website too. And then if any Planning Commission member said, I really think we ought to talk about this, then they would have the authority to do that as I read this. Is that correct? So to me, the key is having people informed. And if you agree that this would be a way of informing them, putting it on the planning commission agendas, and I think also that then puts it on the website too. That strikes me as a good middle ground, because I think that, case by case is questionable beforehand, but I also think that the planning commission ought to feel that they're informed, and if they don't like what's being done, they have the right to bring it to a conversation at the planning commission.
Sort of like a consent item.
Yeah, well, yeah. They wouldn't be voting on it, I mean, if it seems okay to them, then that's just information.
Yeah, otherwise they could set it for a subsequent hearing. Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of an in-between, and which strikes me as, sensible anyway.
Yeah, that's actually, as Mayor Lentz understands, that's the process right now. The commission does receive all correspondence from the zoning administrator, but maybe not with the level of formality or transparency to the public, so we would certainly increase that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
So where would you put that?
I would put it under, what I have to do is rework the extension language sits in each section. There's an extension, so I'd probably modify
We're under the
section
right in B.
C, or add another subsection, that any such finding of the zoning administrator shall be transmitted to the city planning commission within, I'll have to come up with some dates to make sure I'm in the Streamlining Act.
Should be an item E then?
Yes,
E? Okay.
yes. I'll add a new subsection and work with Hal on the language, yeah.
Okay, good. I have just one other sort of curiosity, historically, how this happened.
Killed the cat,
We were talking about it before, in a way, Seppi brought it up. It only takes one member of the planning commission to bring something to a hearing, but it takes two members of the city council. What's the history to that, or explanation for that? I know.
I don't think there is any explanation other than historical accident. Either one could be changed.
Yeah.
I think we wanted to, I would say we, whoever put that there felt that because the council has its own workload or whatever, that there should be a couple members who want to do it. Council agenda, council members could be under a lot of pressure, shall we say, from individual constituents. If it only took one, whereas if you say, well, I can't get anyone else to agree, then kind of off the hook. It's easier to get something on the commission agenda without disrupting their workflow than it is the council, I think, is another.
Okay, I just noticed the difference, and I was curious. But that's one possible explanation for sure.
So you're making any recommendation for change? Just leave it as is?
I think, city attorney's explanation does make some sense. You don't want to have, you already have big enough agendas, so maybe two makes sense. But there is a discrepancy there.
Well, that's a totally different section. We're not even,
Right. I
that's
know.
not even part of this ordinance.
I'm aware of that. I noticed that here, it just took one planning commissioner. So I began to think, how come just one planning commissioner can do it? It takes two of us, That's all.
Well, we could make it
Extra bureaucracy.
Yeah, I mean, we could make it two commissioners, as far as that goes, for consistency. It would seem to make a little sense to say two commissioners.
Any other questions, Ray? All right. Okay, so I got a couple. All right. Okay, so we addressed that.
It's a public hearing if we want to open it, unless you got clarifications.
Yeah, I just got a couple of questions. Okay, you guys asked a lot of them, though, so. Okay. In design permits, so currently we have the planning commission determine whether or not a building meets the standards that represent the city. Though being a former planning commissioner, yeah, I didn't have that training to really know what I should be looking for as far as what is the proper design look of the building that represents the city. And so in talking with Clay, since we don't have that many projects where a design permit is needed, and this is for us to decide, perhaps having the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the council and have the council then make the final decision on the design permit. Have the Planning Commission, of course, deal with everything else, but in regards to this and the design permit, having the council address it. So I want to just put that out there to you guys and have your thoughts. The reason I brought it up was just, the one San Bruno project. I think it would have been better to have more input because it's in such a prominent location. But it went before the Planning Commission. It was approved, and then that was it. Right, and then we get what we get, and not to say it's not. It's an okay building, but I think we could have done better, and I think we would have been able to do better if it would have come to the council with recommendations that came from the Planning Commission.
You're saying so you have to go through the Planning Commission process first.
Absolutely.
And then come to the council for final approval.
That's correct.
To allow for more public input.
Yes. Because we don't do that for single-family homes. There's no design review. But we do for larger projects. And so, to me, that makes sense. Those are the buildings that have impacts on the community. Right?
Well, that goes in the other direction in terms of increasing the agenda. But I don't really have a sense of how many design reviews we're talking about per year. What are we talking about?
Well, it's going to depend on the economic time.
Of course.
But, 8, 10 a year.
Ooh.
Do we have that many, John?
You can, because, it is not, it can be fairly small projects that require some sort of a design permit. You're talking about 2Z kind of projects that require design permits. So it's not always just the big office building at Sierra Point or.
So we don't have design review for single-family homes. But what's the point where a design review kicks in for a residential property? I just don't, in the 8 years that I was on the Planning Commission, I just don't recall there being that many. But, of course, I wouldn't want the council to deal with smaller projects. That isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about the projects that make an impact, that everyone sees in the community. And so maybe if you could word something like that on.
Okay, well, the cutoff right now is no design permit is required for single-family dwelling, secondary dwelling unit, duplex, or accessory structure. So that's the cutoff, is beyond duplex. So again, if you're going to set that kind of bar, it's kind of the same problem the Planning Commission had in a sense of the time extensions. Is there, they weren't able to really draw that line of, well, this kind of project would be comfortable with the zoning administrator, but we wanted to review these. They couldn't come up with that hard and fast line. And, as a council, if you're comfortable and you can come up with that, that's obviously your choice to do, so.
Okay. Maybe I could work with John, find, a threshold, and then when it comes back before the council, we can address it then. That'll work for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All righty. That is it. You guys asked great questions. Now this is a public hearing. I know you guys have been waiting. Michelle gave me her slip. Michelle, come on to the podium, please.
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident. I know that the purpose of this is to clarify and simplify, but it seems to me that in a lot of ways this becomes a slippery slope, and there are many concerns that I have with what I've read in the changes and in what was there before. And one of the things that I'll just try to go through them as quick as I can. One is the state map approval. Well, so what? We should still be able to override the, certain aspects of that, even if the state does extend the map. And this would kind of close the door on some of that. And also, for example, for the Northeast Ridge, I mean, they had 25 years. They had a tentative vested map. And things changed a great deal during that 25 years, and I don't feel that we were able to adequately respond to those changes because they touted their development rights and their vested tentative map and their vested tentative map again and again and again. So that part kind of concerns me. The time extensions and aligning all the time extensions, it kind of closes the door for any reconsiderations due to changes in the environment. And I look at, the permits running out as being an opportunity for changes in response to certain environmental things. But once someone has their rights to build or their expectations to do a certain project, they can sit on that for 5 years and then come back for another extension and another extension, and pretty soon it just becomes accepted that they're going to get to do what they want to do. So I have some real concerns about that. And then I also have concerns over the responsibilities of the zoning administrator versus the planning commission. In the past, there's been some situations where the zoning administrator decided that it was under his purview to approve certain changes or permits. In particular, I'm referring to the property, a single-family house up on the Northeast Ridge, where the then development director / zoning administrator decided that it was under his authority or his purview to be able to approve an extension of a house, to an addition to a house. And that was in direct conflict with what the agreement was when the Northeast Ridge plan development was agreed upon in a sensitive habitat. And it included changes in elevations and landscaping in the yard. And yet all of that is tied together with how the water flows in that area. And the zoning administrator was ready to approve this, and it just was happenstance that we saw this and went and said, no, you can't do this. This is not right. This is against what's in their CC&Rs. This is against what was in the agreement that was made, and it created a lot of hardship and heartache for all of those involved. And I felt terrible going up and saying, no, you can't build a dining room on your house in the Northeast Ridge because you bought a house in a habitat under planned development with a full set of CC&Rs, which the zoning administrator was perfectly willing to ignore and use his authority to do this approval. And I liked the people that lived there, and I wanted to say, sure, build onto your house, have a dining room and everything. But I felt that I had a moral responsibility to adhere to the agreements that were made. And what he was about to do would have set a terrible precedence. And so it did end up going before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission went ahead and approved it because these people were expecting it, and everybody was all on board with it, except that it was wrong. And circumstances were that they didn't end up building the addition. But do they have the approvals to build it, and for how long is that good? But you can see the type of thing that comes up when you allow the zoning administrator to overstep what should have been his boundaries at that point. And it also makes it too easy for the zoning administrator, whoever he may be or she may be, to be under undue influence. I mean, we set up the way that we do this with a natural conflict of interest that the city staff person is in, because they are paid, their salary is contingent upon the amount of development that we have. in certain circumstances, and that includes the zoning administrator. And we set them up for a conflict of interest when we allow that type of authority for any projects larger than, X, Y, and Z. And that's why I think it needs to clearly be defined precisely what we consider a minor modification versus a variance versus, a permit or design permitting. Because we do not want to have any of our people put in that kind of position, whether they're cognizant of it or whether it's, somewhere in the ether, that they realize that their well-being, their personal well-being, is dependent on how they answer this question for a proposed development or a plan. It also puts them in a difficult position when it's a specific variance for a specific person who has political influence or who has, charm or who has, whatever. And a case in point was on Sierra Point Road where the people who used to own 56 Sierra Point Road many years ago came and got all their neighbors within 300 feet to agree not to speak out against them for their variance, where they took a single-family home and tripled the size of it without increasing the parking past one small garage with a very steep driveway. And now those people are gone, they live in Burlingame, and the rest of us who live in the neighborhood still have to deal with that situation. And that, therefore, just notifying the people that are next door or within 300 feet of the property line isn't necessarily the right thing when we live in such a tight community. And when you grant someone a variance or a setback variance or something like that, you're denying fire access to maybe a house that's 2 or 3 feet away in an emergency or an earthquake, or you cut off somebody's escape route, or you can't bring a piece of equipment through there to fix a sewer line because a variance was granted because somebody wanted it that way and somebody else said to somebody, well, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. And that happens. And so we don't want to put anyone in that position, and it needs to be more of a group decision type of thing for some of this stuff. And I think that's why minor modifications and variances need to be very, very clear and somewhat fair. And I know Brisbane's tough because it's a lot of ununiform lots. We're not little ticky-tacky houses on little squares. But there are downstream effects for all these decisions, and the next thing you know, it's grandfathered in. And the next thing you know, then it's allowed. And then the next thing you know, there's a hardship for the next person who comes along to move in there. And as far as the aspect of being able to appeal a decision, I think that timeline needs to be pretty lenient and pretty well publicized. There were some decisions, including the one at the Northeast Ridge SEPI, where if I had to pay $1,500 to appeal a decision that I knew was wrong and was against what was written, I would have said, screw it, let somebody else worry about it, because I don't have $1,500 to do that. And yet I've been to every meeting and I listen to it and I pay attention. But sometimes it takes a while for that information to float out to people in the community, because not everyone's watching Channel 27 on a Monday night. Other people have a life and they do different things instead of coming here. So thank you for your indulgence on this, but I really think that we really need to look at some of these timelines. I think they're too long. I think they're too lenient. They certainly favor development, and I don't think we should favor development in that way in this community. We're kind of out of space for that. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, Tom?
Thank you again, Council. It seems to me this cuts out the Planning Commission altogether and public input. Yes, the next door neighbors get notified, but it affects more than just one neighbor. The section on revocation is now blank, so we have no recourse. And for example, 300 feet from the quarry, there's no housing, so anything can get slipped in there. 300 feet in Sierra Point, there's no housing there. Anything can get slipped in there. Finally, Well, one question was answered. I wanted to know who determines major and minor modifications. And I think this is just too much power to be in the hands of one person. And finally, who is the zoning administrator? Who is it?
Wizard of Oz.
Mhm.
That's John
Sitting over there.
Sawicki.
Foul!
John Sawicki.
Foul!
Yeah.
He's paid by the developer. Yeah, I know you guys are going to say, no, he's not. The developer gives money to the city, and the city turns around and pays his salary. Well, if the developer did not pay the city anything, he'd be out of a job. You don't have the money to pay him. It's not right. Not right. Foul. Thank you.
Can we get clarification on that?
Yeah, so, okay, so Michelle had a few items that she brought up, and some of them we addressed tonight, but just to give clarification, so the state map requirement, saying that we don't have to follow them, how do we,
When the state extends tentative maps, local ordinances are preempted.
Okay. All right. And then, and there was, she brought up the issue in regards to Northeast Ridge and the, because it was such a long process. As that project went on and on, they were subjected to the updated building codes that.
Well, they've always been subjected to the updated building codes, and yes, the project may have gone on a long time, but it was not the same project. There were two substantial modifications along the way, both resulting in substantial reduction in the number of units, substantial increase in the amount of open space dedicated to habitat, and that the last modification ended up with a substantial increase in the amount of homeowner contributions, along with $4 million to the Habitat Endowment and another $1 million or so to the city for public facilities. So it was hardly the same project at the time of the last final maps as it was at the time of the first final maps. It kept getting reduced in size, and the city contribution and habitat contributions kept going up with each modification. So there were changes, and each change was accompanied by an environmental review, and the project has to be built in accordance with the building code in effect as of the time they apply for the building permit.
Okay. And then as far as the extension, there's just one extension, and then after the 2-year extension, the applicant would have to go submit a new...
New application.
Yeah, in some respects, this is actually shorter than what we might have now.
Okay. All right.
I think it is. Yeah, we're actually reducing the time that you would have under our current zoning ordinance.
Okay. Council, were there any other questions that were brought up from the public that you needed clarification on from staff?
Yeah, on the last one, on John's wage, and you can, not you, John, you don't have to explain that one, but Clay.
Well, I mean, the city has always had a planning director, and the planning director's played out of the general fund. I believe the issue that, Tom has raised concerns on before is the fee that we get from Universal Paragon Corporation to administer their application through the city, which is money that is meant to offset all the staff administrative time, not just the planning director. So, I mean, no city staff person's job is contingent upon any particular application or any particular development proposal. It's just revenue that we receive from, to try to offset some of the costs so that the general taxpayers of Brisbane don't have to pay for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, the only other point that I really wanted to make is that the zoning for an area cannot be changed while there's an active open permit on the table. And that kind of ties our hands if we want to change any land use issues. ties it for a really long time. And we've talked about how we want to change certain areas of maybe Crocker Industrial Park to incorporate more mixed use and maybe even housing. And if there's one developer in there or one building in there in that area that says, well, I have an active permit, you can't do that. And that would extend it 5 years, and then the next door neighbor in the meanwhile submits a permit that overlaps it, and the next thing you know, it's 10 years, and you're still not able to change the zoning. And that's actually happening right now in Daly City on a rare and ancient dune that hosts a rare and endangered plant and a Native American site. And there are 2 open permits on the books right now, so Daly City can't change it to open space or rezone it because there are active permits on that area right now that are under review. And so this, if we did want to change zoning for something, say moving it from R1 to commercial, or from commercial to residential, or from commercial to open space, which would always be my favorite thing, our hands are kind of tied for the length of this time that one of these, 5 years on any one of these permits, our hands would be tied for changing any kind of zoning for a whole area just based on one permit in that area. And I think that's something we really need to consider when we're really reevaluating our general plan and our land use to better use our resources here in Brisbane.
Thanks, Michelle. Do you want to address that, Hal?
You need to keep in mind what's vested and what isn't. If you have a tentative map, and the tentative map is only if there's some form of, usually some kind of a subdivision or lot split involved, which is under the Subdivision Map Act. If you're only talking about a zoning approval, then you go back to the old rule that unless you've pulled your building permit and you get started, if we change the zoning, you don't have a vested right to a zoning classification. If I bought property with the idea that I'm going to build a residential project on it, but I do nothing other than own the property, and I'm not asking for a subdivision, I don't get a tentative map or vested tentative map, the city can always change the zoning classification on that property. You don't have a vested right to a zoning category. The vested rights we're talking about are when it's asked for as part of a subdivision process, or if you have a development agreement which gives you the vested right. And that's why people have development agreements, and that's why the city is able to extract, or shall we say negotiate, substantial public benefits in return, is in return for the developer having the assurance that they can proceed with a development in accordance with the city land use approvals. So not everything is vested. It's either vested because it's part of the subdivision ordinance, or it's vested because the city has voluntarily, not by requirement, but voluntarily, entered into a contract with the developer to give him certain rights in exchange for which the city receives certain public benefits.
You know, when I look at this document, I see it with 2 lenses. One is there's the commercial property owner, right, that wants to, maybe, build on their land with the building, or someone out in Crocker Park. But then I also see the homeowner, right, that wants to do a project on their house. And I see, I'm being on the planning commission for 8 years. I saw a lot more homeowners come our way than the big boys. And so, just talking about finances, right? Sometimes it's tough, to get that money. It always costs more than what you think it's going to cost. And so you need that time. And, I really think that having the input from the Planning Commission and trying to, make it more streamlined so that everybody understands the rules of the road is definitely the way to go. So, so if we're good with our discussion, I'll take Do I need a motion on this for the introduction?
Well, we've got substantial changes to this ordinance, and we normally would not introduce an ordinance until you see exactly what you're introducing. There's a lot of work John and I need to do to go back and incorporate all of your good comments into a revised draft. So my suggestion would be just continue the matter, and we'll bring a revised draft back and see if we've addressed your concerns, and we'll go from there. It is not in condition to be introduced right now.
Gotcha. Okay,
We'll
great.
keep the public hearing open then.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Good. All right. Now,
Do we need a motion to do all that? No.
so it's been brought to my attention, and I apologize. We have a guest here, so I would like to change the agenda and make. Let's see. Item letter C, consider approval of farmers market at the community park on Thursdays between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. to be before item A of new business. So,
Second.
okay, good. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so staff report, please. Thank you, Carolyn.
Good evening, Council. I just wanted to quickly go over what's been done so far in terms of a farmers market potentially coming to Brisbane. We have a proposal from West Coast Farmers Market Association. Their executive director, Jerry Lamy, is here for any questions that you have after this staff report. But it is essentially a farmers market that would be offered year-round to the residents and employees of Brisbane. And the location would be at the community park from about 3 to 7, 8 o'clock during the summer months, and 2:30 to 5 during the winter months. And the city engineer has been involved in the discussions of the proposal and has just made the comment about monitoring the wear of the grass to make sure that it's not damaged beyond the point of repair. And Mr. Lamy has had experience working in markets with lawns, and so he has suggestions of putting down mats when the rainy season is occurring so that you keep that area as well maintained as possible, and also turning the stalls to face San Francisco Street rather than inwards to the park so that you keep the foot traffic to the sidewalk when it's raining and wet. But he has been in the business for about 17 months. He has one market currently in the city of Cupertino, and he has proposals in the city of Foster City, Half Moon Bay, and Redwood City currently, with these markets to open at the end of March. And in terms of parking, the city engineer also has been made abreast of those concerns of having the street parking on San Francisco Street and Old County be available to people coming to the market. He was saying that temporary parking along Park Lane would be available for the farmers to park their trucks. Mr. Lamy is estimating about 37 different vendors to be coming to town. This would be every Thursday, and so just to keep in mind, the parking would be available for the farmers on Park Lane after they drop off their produce at the park area. And because the location of the market would be at the community park, the Parks and Recreation Commission did meet with Mr. Lamy at their January 16th meeting, and their chief concern being the grass, and also having the hot food vendors be limited to the people in town with restaurant establishments. Mr. Lamy will talk more about that. And also because at the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting on January 24th, Mr. Lamy returned to present the farmers market proposal, and he spoke about having there be more opportunity for buying hot foods that aren't quite as accessible in Brisbane as they currently are, such as rotisserie chicken and also things that you find at a lot of farmers markets, such as kettle corn and those types of foods. And I think that's about all I have. We did look at the fee schedule that's used for renting the grassy area in the community park by the Parks and Recreation Department, as well as the there's a fee for renting the gazebo area and the picnic tables. And we thought that $200 was a reasonable fee, just because that there is a great community benefit of the community being able to gather each week at a market, there being music to add to the social atmosphere, maybe musicians underneath the gazebo, and also making it available for this use, which hasn't occurred in Brisbane yet, and making that feasible for West Coast Farmers Market Association, for providing that benefit to the community to have access to certified organic fresh food and produce, and having that be a weekly social gathering for the community to come together. So with that, I'll take any questions, but also Mr. Lamy is here waiting also to answer any as well.
All right, well, thank you, Caroline. Any questions for Caroline?
No, I have some for Mr. Lamy, though.
All right, Mr. Lamy, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council.
Welcome to Brisbane.
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
Did you want to say anything about add anything that?
No
Caroline-
problem. Well, I think Carolyn did a great job, and I have been. October 2nd of this last year, I did open a farmers market in Cupertino, kind of in the off season. One of the things that I've noticed in my background in farmers markets is it's always been kind of surprising to me that they're so seasonal, because our weather here is not that bad, and this year I think we skipped winter. But one of the things that happens is the markets work very hard to get up and running in a 12 to 20 week period a lot of times, and then they cancel till the following year. What does happen is that there are a handful of farmers markets that do carry on year round, and a lot of that becomes seasonal farmers. What's happening in Cupertino right now, my vendor count's down a little bit because of the recent frost. The frost kind of wipe out a lot of the different lettuces and things like that. But some of the farmers go out and they water their crops, and that cuts down on the frost, and they're still able to get to market. So where I started with probably 70 tents at one time in October, I'm down to approximately 40 right now. My background in the last 6 to 8 years has been working for a couple of different companies, one being Spring Hill Jersey Cheese out of Petaluma, where I was a cheese vendor. And from there I moved to Homemade Ravioli in South San Francisco. I've also got some experience on the jewelry side, which is the arts and crafts side, working with my girlfriend on that. So I've worked for 3 different vendors. After a couple of years with each company, it seemed like December was a good time to lay me off. So instead of going back into sales, I thought about coming out and seeing about being an operator. Since I've spoken with Caroline, I jumped on a new bandwagon, and I'm dealing with Caltrain, looking at different train stations up and down the Bay Area. I'm also working with a lot of the city colleges now, and Stanford University, San Jose State University, El Camino Hospital, Mountain View, the town of Atherton. I've got about 15 proposals out there, so I'm pretty active. And one of the things that I know I have is I have the support of the farmers that will follow me to a market. It's then my next job to try to get the clientele, the residents to come out and support the farmers. And the timing of that is really, really important. If the farmers follow me and the community doesn't support it, they're only going to last so long. They'll come 3, 4, or 5 weeks, and then they'll say, you know what, that 3-hour drive each direction, and the booth fees and whatever just isn't worth being here. One of the things I was very, very anxious to please the city of Brisbane, and to work with the with your Parks and Recreation Department. I didn't really delve into the thought of trying to protect the local restaurants, because I do want to please the residents of Brisbane. I want everybody to be happy, and I want this to be a really successful, great social event for everybody. The thing that I didn't really give it enough thought about is with their recommendation of limiting the food served at the farmers market to local restaurants, the fact is that a lot of restaurants probably may or may not want to participate in the farmers market. So it's my thought process since that point in time is saying, my pledge to you would be I would go out, seek out each restaurant, give them my expertise as a former restaurant owner. I've owned Mulligan's Pub and Grill and Sneakers Pub and Grill in Redwood City. I have owned and operated Togo's Eateries, owned and operated Round Table Pizza restaurants, and all of that coming into and knowing how to put together a farmer's market, realizing that there are a lot of additional expenses by dealing with the health department, having also to please the Department of Agriculture, fire department, police department, all those things, and coming out to a farmer's market, as well as the addition of paid employees to make that happen, a lot of times makes it too difficult for a restaurant to go ahead and to join a market. They've got to go out and buy tents, put together all the utensils in order to come out and participate. What brought me to Brisbane was the fact that Mr. Carroll, Mike Carroll, is one of my vendors in Cupertino, and he operates out of Midtime Market, and I brought that up, saying that for instance he for sure wants to participate in this, and he wants to jump in. I did have a phone call just before I came into the meeting tonight, and it was the new chef that's working at Club 23. His first name's Aaron, and I didn't write down his last name, and I apologize for that. But he and his wife actually live in Oakland, and they practice vegan and vegetarian type of burgers, and they're looking to try to get into the farmers market business, and are extremely interested in trying to in a booth here in Brisbane. That was the reason for one of his calls. So I spoke with Carolyn a little bit before I came to the meeting tonight to state that absolutely I want to protect everything that's here and the business interests that are here. And what I would do is I would take the next week or two, upon your approval, to go out and to talk to every restaurant owner in town, seeing that I know that it's not a big number. Caroline went over a lot of it with me, as far as there's a taqueria, there's a Thai restaurant, Japanese restaurant, Mamma Mia Pizza, a couple of delis, and Mr. Carroll. Go out and see who's interested, who's not interested. I think, in my opinion, the best way to handle it would be to give the restaurants of Brisbane first right of refusal for their category. And if they chose not to participate, if there are other companies out there, I could bring that back to city staff or whatever and say, these are people that are interested. What's the city think? And with that in mind, what would happen then is we would have the best situation for all vendors that would be willing to participate to come to participate, because the more thought that I gave about your beautiful park and the opportunity for people to socialize and to maybe have a meal in the park, or maybe to feed the kids in the park and then go on to one of your local restaurants, the choice could be made at that point in time. And that's pretty much what I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lang.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Lamy, for wanting to locate here in Brisbane. I know we've inquired about farmers market in the past, and the feedback we've always gotten was, well, it's too small. So I don't know if you're anticipating running into that problem, because it's going to require a certain amount of foot traffic, and I'm sure that the surrounding communities, Daly City, South San Francisco, you kind of want to tap into that in San Francisco, plus the business community in Brisbane. As far as the restaurants go, how many restaurant booths do you anticipate?
It's hard to say. I know that there is like an Indian food person that likes to participate. There's a Raleigh that has like rotisserie chickens.
Yeah.
But Caroline did point out that Mr. Carroll, Mike, has the ability to do that. So once again, if he wanted to do that rather than, and as well as his tri-tip and maybe his Maui Hawaiian ribs, as long as we have those covered and we have them covered here first, then I would not accept applications for anybody else.
Yeah, because we're probably looking at maybe now 11 and 12, and I think restaurants at the most in Brisbane. And I know we recently lost one of our largest, if not the largest, restaurant in town, which is too bad, the Manjari. But I think it's a great idea to go out and seek, participation first, but at the same time, I'm open to allow other folks to come in, because, I think just getting it off the ground initially, you want to do what you can to make it succeed.
You want to start with your strongest suit. It's kind of what I think.
Yeah, if you choke it off too fast, then, people go, God, all I had was hot dog and no mustard. So I think that's a good idea, but I like the idea of being proactive and asking our current businesses here, to participate.
I'll personally do that, and I'll give them the expertise I have to assist them if they're interested.
Yeah.
As far as the size of the city, I believe that's probably why there hasn't been one here in the past. However, farmers markets are really an up-and-coming trend right now. People are very, very into them, and I believe that a lot of your residents currently have to leave Brisbane in order to do a lot of the shopping. Yes. I think that if I do my job correctly, they'll plan on attending the market and doing a lot of their purchases here on a once-a-week basis. And I think that that'll all take care of itself. I know that, for instance, I've got 2 local bee vendors that raise honey that are already fighting over or participating here. And who would have thought that would have happened? So just with me talking to a few vendors already, they're going, I want in. I got the chef from the 23 Club calling me. He wants in. Mike wants in. So I know that they're eager to serve the community. And I believe it's going to be a really neat social event. It's a beautiful city. You guys really work hard. You've got a lot of knowledge. I've heard a lot of great things. I've been doing this for the last 2 years now in front of quite a few city councils. And I've learned a lot. And just by listening to you guys today, I'm glad I'm on this side.
And one more question. Is that, I don't know if I really saw it in here or not, but the vendors you have come in, they're not all organic farmers?
Most of them are certified.
Certified?
In fact, yeah, they're all certified. And as far as being organic is a process. Right. Certification is a must. I run a certified farmers market. So everybody that comes to my market is certified. There can be different classifications of things sold at a market. You've got a certified section. Beyond the certified section, you can go into a processed foods area, a baked good area, and so forth. For instance, a good example would be I found a local orchid salesperson at De Anza Flea Market. And through my learning process, I brought this person to my market. That person was not a grower. They were a resale person. So when the Department of Agriculture came out, they reclassified them from being within the certified section to a resale section on the other side of the market. And so that's the classification is with certification with the Department of Agriculture as far as anything that's grown in the ground, and then everything also has to pass through the health department for anything that's cooked, prepared, or baked.
Sure, yeah, I understand that. But I mean, from organic is all foods organic in a sense, but I'm talking about the organically grown without pesticides, that type of thing, which a lot of people shop at Whole Foods or Rainbow Groceries in San Francisco or Earthbeam down in Burlingame to look for those
I would say probably 60 to 70% of my farmers are organic.
Oh.
If they've gone through the process, and they will have signs posted in order to clarify that.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay.
Very good.
Yes. Yes. I'm curious about Thursdays. The Planning Commission was comfortable with Thursdays?
As we set out, because the answer is yes, they were, and this is how we arrived at it. We determined that there's 4,000 residents in the town of Brisbane, with approximately 8,000 people that work in the industrial parks. Those people have the weekends off and would not be here. When you get into your summer months, how many people vacation and travel? The first day that was suggested was Friday, but a lot of people look at Friday as a getaway day, as a day to get out of town and get away. So then we moved it from Friday to Thursday. We also talked about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and kind of came to Thursday as a day that we may have the best attendance, and that's what was thought of at the time.
Okay. There are some people that even drive all the way to Half Moon Bay to go get plants. I know we do have Mountain Watch that has protect, but these I'm talking about herbs and basil and so forth and so on. Are you going to be able to have little plants for people that they want to have gardens? And
I will do my best to recruit those people. In fact, I spent last Saturday at the De Anza Flea Market, where there are probably, I handed out 37 applications to different nurseries, inviting them to join my association. I'm very familiar with Half Moon Bay and Nurseryman's that has recently changed hands. It's owned by a division of Rocket Farms now, out of Salinas, I believe. And so I do have contacts with those people, and I will attempt to get people here with live nursery plants and herbs.
Correct. Have you been to the farmers market at Kaiser in South City on Wednesday? They have it for only a couple of hours, but it's remarkably good. The strawberries and quality is amazing.
I've worked in farmers markets from Sacramento to Monterey. I've run crews of as many as 17 vendors. I've worked at just about every Kaiser market around. Kaiser's the hospital ones. I've worked probably in about 10 different market organizations like I'm forming, and I've tried to bring the best of all those to what I'm putting together.
How are you going to let the community know that there's a farmers market?
I'm going to attempt to do some advertising. I'm going to work with city staff to see if there's any forms of advertising that we can utilize, as far as maybe buying some advertising and some of the billing that goes out. I believe that you have a local paper that I've seen.
Local TV.
And I will advertise in that. And then possibly I'm understanding that we're on Channel 27 here too, so we'll get that information out that way.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm excited
you, Mel.
about it. Thanks.
You guys have any questions?
I think it's a great idea. I think that a local farmers market is a good thing, and as long as it's diversified, I think I'd sure hope that our community would support it. So that's the only comment I'll have for you. I do have some questions when we get into staff considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know, Mr. Lemmy, I appreciate you reaching out to Brisbane. We need some entrepreneurs that are willing to take a risk, and like Councilmember Conway had said, other farmer market directors passed us by We even had one come to Brisbane and promote farmers market at the Cow Palace. Thank
Mr.
you very much,
Pardini.
right? But of course, that one died.
Yeah.
Right, and none of us want to see your venture go down.
Right.
I think all of us, would work real hard to encourage, to all of our friends to participate. And I think you got a good business model. Doing the one day a week thing makes sense, because if we can get it into people's heads that, okay, on the Thursday, make sure you do that shopping down at the farmer's market. And I like the local participation. I think, we got a lot of fruit trees in Brisbane, and perhaps there's an opportunity for maybe a group to buy a spot, right?
Absolutely.
Or a couple of spots. We have a little community garden, and those folks could come together and take their goods and buy a booth at your market.
1, 2, and 3 neighbors could team up and sell, their locally grown produce, and that would not be a problem. I'm very familiar with what went on in the Cow Palace, and I think the problem was that there was no neighborhood really to the Cow Palace. They were trying to draw from places like Brisbane. I've worked within Urban Village as a vendor, and my Cupertino market has just put his Los Altos market out of business. Not that I'm touting that, it's just that location is extremely, extremely important when you decide to go in and put together a farmer's market. It's also having the support of the vendors, and so far I'm blessed that I do have their support, and as long as I do my job now on the other side to rally the residents, and I will do my best to do that too.
All right. And so Thursday, you feel is the best day for you as well?
I have no other market on Thursday at all. I can give my full attention to it.
Okay.
My son goes to San Francisco State. He'll be swinging on over. He's also a play-by-play announcer for KZSU with Stanford. So he's got his dad's big mouth, I'm afraid to tell you. So.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you
for coming. And let's see. All right. So the rental fee of $200, you're cool with that?
Absolutely.
That makes sense. And then one of the recommendations from the Park and Rec Commission was a 3-month period for the market, and it's something I guess we can all talk about.
I think that's on trial basis, and you know what? Trial basis really don't bother me at all. I think it's a good thing. If it's not supported, it's going to die a natural death.
Well, you're going to be the one really in the end that's going to say, or your vendors.
My vendors will pull out, and if there's nobody here, there's not going to be anybody that's going to come to see that there's nobody here. And so week by week, month by month, I think that's the way that we build them, and we're only as successful as the community wants it to be. And so I'm very, very comfortable in any regulations like that.
Okay, good. All right, thank you, Mr.
No problem.
All right. So Terry, you had some questions, so.
My big question is, I understand that starting out the fee for the market, it's more of a promotion for Brisbane and it's a benefit for Brisbane, but I do think that it should be loosely based on the participants at the market rather than a flat fee. If we have 37 vendors, which I hope we do, chances are that the $200 fee won't cover our garbage pickup and our bathroom cleaning. And perhaps something's been built into the fee that I don't know about, because you're raising your hands like...
There should be no garbage. All the vendors pick up all their own trash and take it with them, and I follow behind them and take the rest.
Okay.
So that's something that's That's the organics of a farmer's market. The farmers do clean up their mess. Now, if some of the residents go back to the tables and stuff, I guess that would I'll go and I'll go around the park and I'll pick everything up, make sure that my staff and I will clean everything, and I guarantee it'll be cleaner than when we came. I'll give you an example. I'm directly across the street from the De Anza Flea Market, which just happened this last Saturday. So on Sunday, my son and I got there at 6 in the morning and spent 2 hours picking up 2 30-gallon bags of trash that were in the parking stalls adjacent to us, because city council put into my recommendations that I clean up all along Mary, which is adjacent to where my market is, and that's what we're doing. And in order for me to stay there, we'll be doing that every week.
It's good to hear.
Not a problem.
And that's one of my concerns that wasn't addressed in this, that it is cleaned up and that it does take care of itself. Now, he has no control about people throwing their garbage on the street, and thank goodness we don't have that big a problem with that here. But I do think we, rather than a flat fee, I think we should tie it to the success of the market, however we work the fee. And I can see doing it for the first 3 months as a trial basis with the flat fee, but I think we need to really look at maybe based on a per vendor type of fee structure that takes into the success of his business, into the success of ours.
Yeah, when I let's see, there's an art festival called the Park City Art Festival. They used to take a certain percentage of the sales.
That'd be different.
And then they decided, you know what, I don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. I'm gonna pay that one flat fee. Whatever you sell is what you sell. And you're right. I mean, if we took a dollar amount per vendor, we might make more money. But we could make less, right? Depending upon how many vendors show up. When you charge the one flat fee, everyone knows how much it's going to be. And I think with the 3-month period, we'll kind of get a feel for, is that the appropriate amount to take in. I really don't see this being so much a moneymaker for the city, but I want to address your concerns about it. Does it cost the city more money in administering the energy that would go into putting it on, and cleaning it up? And I think as long as we have a good contract in place, and maybe if you could provide some other contracts that you've worked out with other cities, so that we make sure that we're not missing anything, because this is our first farmers market we've ever done, would be helpful, and see what happens after that 3 months.
My concern is that I see events that have been city-sponsored, whether it's the festival in the park or the concerts or any of those things. And there is some city oversight that goes into any event like that. So I just want us to be aware that if we're lucky enough to get 20 vendors, the $200 fee is $10 per vendor. And so I just think we need to look at that as far as what we're really going to invest in this so that it works for everybody.
I agree with you, Terry, but, being a smaller community and chances for our success is probably less, being so small, that I would really like to give it a year to see how it does before we kind of get esoteric on the financing of things.
Okay. I will mention that I just found out that we have a thriving food truck business out at Sierra Point. And every noon hour for 2 hours, there's 6 to 10 food trucks that are there selling food. And I overheard it, I stopped for the first time on last Friday, and I actually heard people saying, we don't work in the neighborhood, we just drive up the freeway and pull over here 2 or 3 times a week to see what trucks are here. So I think if we have a good product, people will pull off the freeway and could come into Brisbane and help support this. So I think it's a very good thing, and I think it does have the possibility of success, and I'm certainly hoping it does.
Yeah, and I think we should take the measures to make it successful without, putting too much of a strain, like, okay, Stuart, pull out your calculator. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, from that point. But I mean, it's a great idea what you're saying, but I think, we need to kind of allow that foundation to build first and then go from there.
Yeah, I like the 1-year thing too, Clark.
Yeah, just give it a year, because I mean, but in the, are you finished? I just wanted to say we have kind of 2 different things here. We have a recommendation for council to receive staff's presentation and provide direction and approval concerning its proposal, but we don't really have a contract or anything like before us.
Right.
So I mean, we're.
Approval in concept.
Yeah, okay. So there'll be something coming forward, or what? What are we approving, the concept, or?
Approve the concept.
Okay.
That was your concern, Sabine?
No, just quickly, on a sidebar, when you were talking about food trucks, Clay, in Alameda, I understand just yesterday or the day before, they passed an ordinance for food trucks to get a permit. I think we need to look at that.
So just to let you know, so for food trucks that sell food within Brisbane, we do collect a business license. Our business license is $50 for the first $50,000 worth of business that a business does in town. So there's no food truck that does more than $50,000 of gross receipts in our town. So in this example, let's say we had 40 vendors in town doing this. If you take the 40 vendors times the $50 per vendor, it would be about $2,000. At $200 a week times 52 weeks, it's $10,000. So I mean, comparatively, I think this works out compared to what it would be if it was regular food trucks. So we do already have something in place. You may want to look at that as a business license. If you change your business license, it's got to be through a vote of the people. So, I mean, business license is considered a tax, and it would be a vote if we did it that way.
So off this subject, are we aware of the food trucks out at Cedar Point?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's where Stuart eats.
No, I go to 7 Mile House.
All right, so, Tom?
Thanks. Just a quick comment. My experience with farmers markets is that by 3 o'clock, everybody's gone. And if it's during the week and you work, you have no opportunities to go there. So having this start at 3 o'clock and people that do work coming back home, being able to get their food for the weekend is awesome. And I'm glad to hear you guys support it.
Thank you, Tom.
I was going to ask what the ratio would be of organic to non-organic, but I think that was answered.
Yeah, I think we're all supportive, Mr. Lammy, and again, thank you for taking a chance on Brisbane, and yeah, we'll do whatever we can on our end to make it a great success.
So I move approval in concept with the understanding that the staff will come back with an agreement to sign.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so going back to item number 8 under new business.
Can I ask something real quick?
Sure.
On item B.
You want
Is there a
to?
lot of questions on that? I don't really, I think, okay.
We've been kind of
Department wants to
moving
do
it.
Make
I
a
just-
motion to approve it.
If
I don't
you
have
take
any
it out of
questions.
order.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have any issues with the police department wanting to do that. I think I appreciate them wanting
Police
to
Officers
have
Association wants
the
to pay for
pride.
it.
Yeah, they're going to cover the costs and.
And Commander Meisner sitting here going, God, are you guys going to make it through the meeting tonight?
Yeah, I know. We've moved it. This is.
How many times now?
No, I'm glad you brought that up, Clark. So, does anybody have any issues with it?
I'm going to make one real quick comment.
Okay.
Working in the body shop industry, taking a car and adding a second color to it, if it's not done right, within a year looks very shoddy. And if you look at the taxi cabs that are running around that have the midnight special paint jobs on them, they all look pretty good driving down the freeway. But if you walk up to the vehicle, you can see how poorly they're done. So as long as they are done properly.
We have a vendor selected that the city has done business with prior, and so far the paint hasn't fallen off those cars, so.
It's not
Okay.
Earl Scheib.
No.
Well, I won't ask what vendor because then I'd have to exclude myself, but it's just a comment that, if it's done fly by night, it'll look fly by night.
I
So,
appreciate that. We definitely want them to look sharp, and that's part of the point, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. All righty. Okay, so let's see. We did that one, this one. Okay, item A. Give staff direction of updating green building ordinance to LEED Gold standard. Staff report.
Just real quickly, this item, again, was first discussed in the summertime when the Sierra Point office building was approved, and there was a discussion about taking the city's green building ordinance to LEED Gold. But there was never any formal sort of initiation of such an amendment to the municipal code to do so. So I'm just looking for direction from the city council, if authorize staff to initiate that amendment, or if you have other direction and also a path forward. The original green building ordinance was subject to Open Space and Ecology Commission committee review, and whether or not you want to have any sort of amendment go that path forward as well. So just kind of looking for council direction as to how you wish to proceed.
John, you had, in your staff report, you also mentioned the more aggressive tier standards of the state building code, Cal Green. Can you explain that? And then also just real quick about how the LEED process works.
Well, in terms of the city's LEED process, it's tied to LEED Silver, but there's no requirement for certification at this point. You have to demonstrate how you can achieve the points to achieve LEED Silver, but you don't have to go through the U.S. Green Building Council formal certification for LEED. So that's the structure of our current ordinance. In terms of the tiers, the various Cal Green tiers, again, it's category by category of water conservation, energy conservation. So there are certain requirements in each of those categories that if you adopt the various tiers or pieces of the tiers, you would establish that as in lieu of the basic Cal Green, which is the statewide uniform code. So I don't have the details on all the tiers and the standards right in front of me tonight, but if that's obviously the direction of the council, if that's a different approach you want to take from LEED, that's you're at your discretion.
Sure, Clark.
I'd be in favor of sending it to the planning committee or the Open Space and Ecology Committee and let them go through that process of looking at LEED Gold versus going Cal Green, and how all that meshes together. Because I think we'd like to get a better understanding, because I think we were the second city in California to have a green building ordinance, first in San Mateo County, of course. Like we were with Seppi suggesting to get on the website for the state org. I just think it's good to go ahead and send it to them and let them delve through it.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Plus, we got some new appointees hopefully coming aboard pretty soon. This would be a real nice cut for them to help understand.
Now, we've also had issues that have been brought up by the Planning Commission that they've wanted to participate, you know, in that process as well. So I'm going to put this out to staff. I mean, how do we, you know, I'd like to get a recommendation from you in regards to involving the Planning Commission.
Well, it's not, the green building ordinance doesn't sit in the zoning code. So it's just, I mean, so it's really not part of their formal discretionary purview. But of course, if the council, you direct them to review a particular topic that's outside their normal scope, that's, you know, your prerogative to do that. So, you know, if you want them to weigh in on this particular issue, or as the mayor's mentioned, they have certain green building sort of concerns that they raise routinely, and whether or not that can get integrated into a final ordinance of some type, certainly you can refer it to them if you wish.
Excuse me. Could we perhaps have a liaison between the Open Space and Ecology and the Planning Commission to work on this in some sort of joint, or if there's a member of the Planning Commission that's interested in sitting in on theirs, you know, work some sort of
So like a subcommittee
coordination
of each, you know, that might be
able to get something quicker, better and quicker, and get the input from both sides to begin with.
I think it would be
Yeah.
great.
So, okay. Yeah. Have a subcommittee between.
That possibility is already in the rules and procedures for the Open Space and Ecology Committee, to have subcommittees with other committees and commissions.
Okay.
So the council's already approved that as a way to go.
So that would be different than the people who are already in the Open Space Committee.
It would be members from both the Planning Commission and from Open Space and Ecology working in
Correct.
It would be a
conjunction.
subcommittee from
Because
each.
it's a new subcommittee if you're talking about. So,
Then I guess it would make who would they make the recommendations?
Yeah, well, then the
to?
process would be.
It would seem the process would, it would, to me, that the Open Space and Ecology Committee has really worked a lot on this in the past, and certainly there's one member there who's been through this a lot. So it would seem to me it would make, and you have the staff person there, Lisa Pontecorvo, who really knows this stuff. So it probably makes sense to start there, then have the subcommittee to keep in touch with what's going on at Open Space and Ecology Committee, you know, between the committee and the Planning Commission, and then bring it to the Planning Commission before it comes to us. Because I think that there are it's a really complicated issue, because you're not only talking about, you know, raising the level, but LEED changes that virtually every year. So you need to find out, you know, where LEED is at, which I don't think anybody really knows at this point, and then how that compares with the tier levels that the California is doing. And then in the past, we've even talked about something that one of our consultants discussed, was something called LEED Plus, where you say, okay, you get points in such and such an area, but we want to make sure you get a minimum threshold of points in some category. And rather than leaving it entirely up to the developer as to, you know, what they pick in order to get the points, in order to get to the level that they need. All that can be investigated, and I think that the person who really can do that staff work, of course, is Lisa Pontecorvo. And, you know, then the Open Space and Ecology can start the process, then they set up the subcommittee, work with the Planning Commission, and then they're interested very much too. They've said so. So I think it would be good to run it by them.
Mr. Mayor, I had a clarification. What I understood, which I support your recommendation, Terry, you're talking about creating a subcommittee that would represent maybe 2 members of Open Space, maybe 2 members of Planning Commission, maybe 2 City Council, staff member, but that's one of the problem is 2, 4, 6 is.
I wouldn't recommend involving the council yet. I think staff needs to be oversight because they're going to need the technical expertise. But I think if we can get the brainstorming power from Open Space and Ecology and the Planning Commission, and then they bring it to the Planning Commission for consensus, that brings it to
Can I
us.
reiterate
Planning
this?
Commission or the Open Space and Ecology Committee that it would go to?
Open Space and Ecology. Look, can I reiterate what your proposal is, Ray? So you're proposing that Lisa works on this initially, and then have a subcommittee of 2 members from each, one from the Planning Commission, one from the Open Space and Ecology Committee, form it. Then it goes to the full Open Space and Ecology Committee, and from there it goes to the Planning Commission, and from there it comes to us.
Right.
That's what you, okay.
An extra step that I didn't think about, but he's probably correct
Okay,
on
I
it
just-
needing
I
that
just
extra
wanted to
step.
Make sure that that's what I heard you say, and the proposal and the logistics of it, so. And
But John,
Turning to
so,
staff,
John,
well,
I see you
well,
nodding, is that, okay, because that was a little bit different than what you were thinking before, but I guess maybe now that we've kind of aired it
Yeah,
out.
it's fine.
Okay.
well, he's asking for recommendations, so no.
All right, so I think that is the recommendation.
Well,
Or are you
I
still-
want to ask staff is, do you want to come back to us and see on those timelines, that we've given out, in our goal setting session and stuff like that, this may kind of alter that a little bit? And I think that's a fair question.
I think at this point, it'd be pretty hard to estimate what the timeline on this would be.
Okay. And I, just want to
Mm-hmm.
kind of understand that, it's like, whoa, hey,
Well, I mean, we're making this, I mean, it could be, sometime next year, right? That by the time it gets back to
Not
the
necessarily.
council.
Depends.
right?
Well,
It
I mean,
depends.
it depends. I mean, we got a lot on the plate, right?
Yeah,
So, I mean,
but I would really
have our
like
priorities.
the Baylands project to be subject to this ordinance. I don't want to have the ordinance hanging out there,
Well,
and then,
Well-
I mean,
Yeah, I think when you look at this is everything besides the Baylands. The Baylands is going to be way
Right.
beyond anything that we come up with
Right.
as far as LEED Gold. So that's off the table. I think we're talking about things like Sierra Point or the Crocker Industrial Park.
Right.
Central
Right,
Brisbane.
exactly. I think when you see the sustainability principles that are very close to coming out, right? You'll see that what we are hoping for in the Baylands is way beyond any of these things.
okay.
And that's why it wouldn't be appropriate for, as long as we can get buy-in on sustainability principles, where we're talking about zero carbon, for instance.
Okay.
That's way beyond anything even LEED Platinum
Yeah.
has.
When we, like I said, we got a lot on the plate. We've put a lot on the plate for our, the Open Space and Ecology Committee and the Planning Commission. And so, I mean, they're going to have to, they're going to want to do a good job with this. And we don't want to feel like we're
Right.
pressuring them.
Right.
So
You're
whenever
right.
it
Right.
gets done, it gets
Is,
done.
this may be a crazy question, is there a quick fix to the current green building ordinance that we could just substitute the word gold, pass it, I mean, not tonight, but pass it, and then let the Open Space and Ecology Committee and the Planning Commission work on fleshing out a really great ordinance?
Yeah, I mean, why not, right?
I mean, is there, just sort of slash it out and write
Just
gold
change-
instead of silver?
Yeah, change silver to gold. I mean, we have a process that we're going to have, that will go, that will do out at Sierra Point that is already going to be LEED Gold. So we've kind of set a precedent.
With
So-
just
Well,
that
you've
word.
got one building by someone who's investigated what the differential in cost and construction would be. I think before we did that, we'd want to establish a record that we have some understanding of what the differences are between silver and gold. I don't know, and I think we need some guidance from Lisa or the construction industry
Okay.
so we know exactly
Well-
what we're doing.
It was just a thought.
Yeah, educational.
Yeah, all right.
And I think it's important for the process that we have these advisory committees, and, you know, this is what they've been asked to do, and we should use their expertise and their recommendation capacity, and this would be really something that they'd be interested in doing, so I don't think we want to preempt them.
You're right, and I think also when the council is looking at upgrading something, the developers, if they have a project, they're aware of, okay, yeah, this is what the council's proposing, and they accommodate. Okay, so,
10:30.
we ready for a motion to,
I don't think we need a motion on this. do we?
Would you prefer a motion, or do you need, or?
done?
Actually, I think, given the unique request you've made in terms of how this is going to work, I think it would be good to get that on the record.
Okay, so then we move that we refer the upgrade of the green building ordinance to the Open Space and Ecology Committee and the Planning Commission, with the understanding that they will work together via a subcommittee process.
And then,
Of course, it comes back to the council. I mean, that's...
Okay, I'll second the motion.
no, there was other
I understood
steps, right? So you form the subcommittee, then it goes to the Open Space and Ecology Committee, and then it goes to the Planning Commission, and then it goes to the council.
Yeah.
So that's the motion. We got a second?
And with Lisa, second, yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, good. Okay, so it is 10:30. Do I have a motion for?
Motion to extend meeting
To say 11?
15 minutes, 20, okay, 11.
Okay, good.
30 minutes.
I got a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good, okay. Item D, review city council subcommittee list. Staff report, please.
Print out the new list.
Is your microphone on, Clay? Oh.
Last week, we did solicit the preferences of each of the council members with regards to the assignments to various sorts of commissions, subcommittees, boards. Some of these, as you know, are outside of the city of Brisbane, and some of them, probably the majority of them, are subcommittees of the city council. We've identified where we need alternates or we need an appointment. We've also identified a couple of areas where there are more than one person who wants a position, and that would be primarily item number 5, the City County Association of Governments, excuse me, and number 29, which is the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, referred to as BOSCA.
It doesn't correlate with this list, does it? Or-
Yeah, this list based on recommendations is obsolete by now.
Yeah, we got an email of it. It had the red highlight.
Oh, is she handing it out? Great.
I thought I put it in boxes, but maybe everyone
Okay, thanks. Cool.
I got it.
You got it?
I didn't. Thank you.
So in terms of the,
Last night.
Mr. Mayor, in terms of the color setting, if you have gray, that's where we need appointments. Either no one identified for that position. The red is where there's the conflict. And the yellow simply denotes where there are new additions or new members of the council have asked to sit on these, and there's not a conflict in those cases.
Well, maybe we could deal with the yellow first.
Yeah, the yellow you could probably just deal with quickly.
We do that with a motion to approve all yellows.
Sure. I'll move then.
Yeah, second.
Wait, who moved in second? You moved.
I made the motion, Ray second.
All right, so on all the yellows. All right.
We have to vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wait a minute. How can we do all in yellows if, yellows with no red?
Correct. So the next would be the grays, which need, signified needing an appointment in those, for those items, for those committees.
Airport Community Roundtable.
I have a question. Is the Peninsula Traffic Congestion Relief Alliance, is that still alive?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What are they doing?
Seppi, you're currently sitting on that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what do they do, Seth?
What do they do?
What are they doing now?
Really, not much.
Yeah. Okay.
But,
I mean,
that notwithstanding, we still have an appointment on that board.
they
Seppi?
operate the shuttles, right? I mean, they're actually the shuttle
Shuttles,
operator,
yeah.
right?
Thanks.
The overseer?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the shuttle program.
yeah.
For the whole county?
Whole county.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got 20 member cities, right, Seppi? It's 20 now? Well,
Almost all, yeah, almost,
Yeah.
right.
Uh-huh. So how often does it meet?
Depending really on what happens, but generally I think they've been meeting every other, maybe 4 or 5 times a year,
Uh-huh.
8 o'clock. And they meet in whether Foster City or San Mateo.
Okay.
And when you say 8 o'clock, you mean AM?
Yes.
That counts me out.
Clark, you're the alternative. Did you want to move up to the main person? That was Seppi's position, but you decided not to do that anymore, correct, Seppi?
Hmm?
You were
Right,
doing that, and you
right,
decided to
right.
step down from that.
Right,
Um,
right. If there's nobody else, I would continue that. That's not a problem. The committees that I have shown interest, I'd like to continue. Most of them are, I have assumed leadership role that I'm in the process of moving on to becoming a chair.
mhm.
So like the CCAG, before there was a thing that in order to become a chair, you must have been a chair of subcommittee,
All right.
which finished my chair as a CMAC person. Congestion management, it's a subcommittee.
All right.
I've done that, so I'm moving. So
We'll
what I'm
get to
saying
that.
is
I
I'm
know. We'll get
continue-
to that one
Okay,
in a little bit, but we're going to do the grays right now. And I know that it was, Ray brought up the Peninsula Traffic Congestion Relief Alliance. Now, the reason you brought it up, Ray, because you were considering it.
I didn't have a clue as to what they were doing.
It used to be MITSMA.
Yeah, right.
And then ITSMA and MITSMA combined,
Yeah.
and then it became the Peninsula Congestion Relief Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually was the first sitting chair of that, and it was, at the time, I think, 12 member cities. And it's now become all cities in San Mateo County, I think, right, Seppi? I don't know if maybe one that is not on there, but I think it's all cities.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Clark, so I'm going to put it back to you. What about it?
Well, if nobody else is going to take it, then I'll do it.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to go back and to start at the top of the list. So we got the Airport Land Use Committee. Terry is on it. We need an alternate. Now, Seppi, you do have some airport roundtable experience.
It's different.
So, is it totally different?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. These two committees I know about.
Okay.
The airport roundtables deal with noise,
Yeah.
right, mostly.
right,
Okay.
this is land.
And this is the
use.
airport land use committee.
Right, but it's
That
still,
deals
there
with
isn't
land
there's
use. Anything that might
involved.
affect flight patterns, you have to get approval through the Airport Land Use Commission. That's what that's about. So if we build a 12-story building,
Okay.
they're in the pathway, you got to go to the Airport Land Use Commission to get approval for that.
Okay.
so Mr. Miller, since you know about this, would you be willing to?
Yeah, I could do that.
Coach me?
Okay, good.
I could do that.
All right, good. Got rid of there. clerk here. Okay, good. San Mateo County Emergency Services Council.
How active is that? Do you know what?
And when do they meet?
They meet, I think, about 3 or 4 times a year, if I'm not mistaken. In the evenings.
In the evenings?
I believe they meet in the evenings.
And their main concerns?
They oversee some of the budgetary issues in terms of shared communications and equipment through the sheriff's office. And I want to correct myself. I'm not 100% sure it is an evening meeting, now that I say that.
All right, so that was something that Cy had done.
I believe they're the evenings, but I'm just not 100%.
Okay. Does that work for you, Terry?
Well, at this point, I don't know a lot about any of these, so it'll be certainly a learning curve to see what kind of time frame they take up to begin with.
When do they
So I'm
meet?
a bit worried about overextending myself to begin with.
Okay.
About
All right.
three or
I mean, I
four
just
times.
want to put it out there.
When? At what time?
I mean, I do.
I don't know. I don't recall.
Okay. Ray?
No, that's not my thing.
I just would say that with any of these committees, we'll get the council member connected with the City of Brisbane staff person who can get you up to speed on what's happening with that committee, and because all these have some level of city staff involvement in.
And these are all one-year commitments. If I decide that, hey, I didn't like that, or it was just too time-consuming, didn't really work with my schedule, you can back out of it.
I just have a little bit more regular work schedule than not regular work schedule. So
You're a 9 to 5er.
I'm a 9 to 5er, and I end up taking vacation time for my personal time off. So I don't want to overcommit myself to daytime meetings.
Can I ask a question? Could number 14 and number 4
Well, they're two different bodies, so they couldn't be.
I see.
You could have the same person, and actually, in the past, Cy was the city's representative on both of 14 and 4.
I pulled up the Emergency Services Council. Looks like their meetings are quarterly, 5:30 to 6:30 at 400 County Center in Redwood City. And it says the mission of the, emergency services to provide planning, preparedness, public information, training, and federal intergovernmental emergency services coordination for the 20 cities within San Mateo County.
What day of the week?
Let's see. So there's like a January 20th, April 21st, and it doesn't say if it's what days those are.
Wednesday or Thursday, I think.
Yeah, I'd have to look at a calendar.
Could be, is it the third Friday, the second Friday?
I think it's a Thursday.
They're quarterly in the evenings.
I'll do it if nobody's going to step up.
January 20th, so it would be
Thursday.
Thursday. Thursday. It looks like it's Thursdays.
Thursday, 5:30.
All right.
Second
Clark
Thursday.
decided he wants to do it, so
Clark.
put Clark in there.
Yep.
Good job, Clark. Thank you. Okay. So, looks like we're good for the first page. Okay, low and moderate housing. I haven't, let's see, I was doing that with CEPI, but we haven't had any meetings. Do you anticipate us getting together for this, Clay?
Well, yeah, I mean, if it all depends on what happens
RDA.
with the housing funds, but if the housing funds are secured, then yes, I would anticipate some meetings.
I would be willing to do that, yeah.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, I just indicate that on number 12, make recommendation that we combine 12 and 25 together, and we call that a financial planning / labor negotiations.
Yes.
Yeah, you kind of been doing that anyway.
So, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, the only difference is that that committee hadn't been dealing with like policies and audits and things like that, so we'll combine that into that committee now.
Okay. That work for you, Sabi?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so 19, public information technology. So that was Clark and Seppi. And Clark, you decided to not do that anymore?
We
You
don't
guys never
meet-
met.
yeah, we don't meet very much. I mean, we pretty much, I mean, last time we met was on the iPads.
Now, you've been talking up the broadband, and is that kind of where you would have that? No.
We haven't discussed that yet.
Yeah.
Is this the committee where you would have that discussion, or
No, it's
maybe
not
we brought it
gonna
up
be-
in
it's
the
an ad hoc-
economic?
It's an ad hoc committee, but it'll probably morph into economic development, but it may be a flavor of 19, yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say.
So, do you think we still need it?
Well, you know, I mean, from periodically, I think there's a chance that we might need it. Right now, we've already done all the work with the website. The newsletter is kind of working the way it is working effectively. So there's not a real immediate need, but, you know, over a year or 2 year period, there may be a need to go back to it.
Okay.
All right, just to
Good,
get through
put you
this.
back on it?
Just put me back on it to get through this.
Okay, good. Okay, 21, Housing Endowment and Regional Trust Heart Agency Committee member.
Well, since everybody's picking up, I mean, Ray, you don't want anything on this?
I have no idea what this one is.
It's
I haven't a
new one.
clue.
Just go ahead and put my name there. Let's put my name.
You want to do that one, Sebi? Okay.
Why are we getting all these letters about people who want to be elected to that?
No, there's a body, all cities that are member of the HEART, they have a representative, just
Right.
the city part. Then they have a board.
Uh-huh,
Then that board, there are vacancies. Then you apply for that.
okay.
That's what the letters are for the board.
So who do they apply to? I mean, who makes the decision?
Um,
Council of Cities.
Is it a council of
Yes,
cities
Council of
appointment?
Cities, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Got it.
Okay. All right, now Clay just left. So let's just wait until he comes back, because now we're done with the grays. We just have
So
item.
what did you do with the public information? Or Clark went?
Yeah, put me back on.
Yeah, so we got 5 and 29 to deal with, and I'm going to wait until Clay comes back.
Oh, which one are we?
We're going to 5 and 29.
Do you want me to get him? You need to pay?
Yeah, I just want him to give a brief description of the two items.
The two items in
No,
regards to
time.
CCAG?
So we have 2 council members that have expressed interest in roles that only require 1 representative. So the first one is number 5, which is City County Association of Governments, right, CCAG. So Clay, can you just give a brief description of what
Excuse me.
that is?
May I?
Well, I'd
CCAG?
yeah, well, I
CCAG
just,
has an alternate too, not just one. CCAG is just like anything else. You have a member and an
an
alternate.
alternate, okay. Okay, so I guess we need an alternate then
That's what we need, or...
for that.
Yeah.
Okay, but Clay, if you can just describe the position.
Well, the CCAG is, consists of all 20 cities in the county and the county. It's the Congestion Relief Management Agency for San Mateo County, and they oversee a variety of regional and sub-regional efforts, everything dealing with the
Transportation.
wastewater permit, not wastewater permit, the
MPD, yes?
yes, thank you. It's getting late.
NEPTES.
You know, and things of that nature.
Okay. All right. So we have two council members, Seppi Richardson and Clark Conway, both are interested in the position. So I would like to hear from both council members. So Seppi, if you'd like to go first and tell the council why you feel that you're the best person for the position.
I've been involved with transportation tremendously, congestion and so forth. I've served on the congestion, what do they call it? CMAC, CMAC, congestion management, environment quality, on that one. My relationships that I have built on CCAG has helped me to get a lot of, what they call it, a lot of help, support at the airport roundtable. I attend the meetings. I've been very engaged, very involved. I've been on the finance committee. It's not just the board. They have finance committee, legislative committee, employee relations committee. I'm serving on every one of those committees.
Within the CCAG?
Yes, it's not just sitting at the board. In order to be truly effective, I felt that I needed to be on the finance, legislative, work with the CCAG lobbyists, got involved a lot with the DMV, the measure that passed, the $10 per DMV. Very engaged, and because of that, I got into the Resource Management Environment Quality Committee that meets on Fridays from 1 to 4. This committee has, because of this, I'm serving on 4 or 5 other committees because of this.
Okay. And how many years have you been the city's representative?
This is after Lee Panzo was on for 16 years, as long as he was there. And then the council would not change it because once the person has been there and doing a good job, they continued it. And when the opportunity came that he left, I was nominated to be on that. And I've appreciated the support and the continuation of that.
Okay. All right. Clark, you're also interested in the position. So.
You know, I too have had experience on congestion management, which I was the first chairman of the board of the Congestion Relief Alliance to help bring that, together with all the shuttles in San Mateo County that work real effectively, and actually was instrumental in helping getting the free shuttle here in Brisbane. There has been quite a dominance on this subcommittee. Seppi indicated she was appointed in 2005 and has been the only representative since then. Our first representative, of course, was Ray Miller, who helped form it, and the only other representative has been Lee Panza. And I think as widespreading as this is, I believe that other council members should have the opportunity to serve on this, to really learn the inner workings of things that go on in the other cities and the counties, in the county of San Mateo, and how all this meshes together. I think it should be rotating every 2 years and not dominated by one person. And I think that's what we should do. I think you should appoint me to this tonight, regardless of what Seppi's chairs are or whatever she's going to be on the future chair. I think you've actually chaired CCAG before.
No, No, I have not.
Okay.
They would not let you become chair unless you've served on other committees and chair, and
But I think
that's
we
what I
need
understand.
fresh blood on this. I have never, since 2005, heard one report from CEPI on what CCAG has done, or CMAC. And I think we do deserve that, and
If that's
appointed,
something
I
you
will-
want, you
I
get,
will
but
be
I
giving
don't.
reports.
And I have served on
All right,
Alliance.
is he,
Sorry.
Yeah. So I would appreciate your appointment, and I think we should rotate every 2 years, and if a person chooses not to be on it, then they can bypass it.
okay,
And that's my suggestion.
all right. So, Ray and Terry, you've heard some information about the position. I'd like to get your feedback on some of the items that have been brought up. Terry? Just about the information about the position, not so much about the qualification or anything like that, but just,
I wish I knew more and about the actual workings of it, because I will admit that I don't know enough to ask a good question at this moment, which is a little embarrassing that I don't know enough about it. But it is a learning curve, and obviously has impact on how Brisbane is looked at and how much attention we get. And with that, I'll leave it to another question.
all right, Ray, well, so apparently, you helped form the CCAG.
Mhm.
So, provide a little insight, if you may.
Well, it's probably the most important countywide organization that we participate in, because it does include all 20 cities. It has a variety of functions, one of the most important of which is that it does make recommendations on the allocation of transportation funding, state and federal, that come through MTC. They do the annual congestion management plan. They review cities' general plans to make sure they're consistent with the congestion management plan. There are a lot of additional programs. They have a legislative program. They have the abandoned vehicle program. The Airport Land Use Commission is actually a subcommittee of CCAG. So it has a multifunctional purpose. It is where people from various cities get together and actually really make decisions and do things, in contrast to the Council of Cities, which is mostly a social thing. So that CCAG, I think, to reiterate and to finish, is the most important all-county city representation organization that we participate in, I think.
I have a question for you, Ray. Having been on, having formed this group, this organization, how important is it to be on the different committees, to chair these certain committees? I mean, does that give Brisbane any advantage to having our concerns being listened to throughout the county?
Yeah, I think that the more recognition that Brisbane gets, and I think actually it's partly the recognition of other council members when there are decisions to be made, but also it's knowledge of the various staff people who are involved. The county itself actually provides the staffing. There's an executive director, but the county provides most of the staffing. The legal counsels from the county, they do public works things from the county, the Airport Land Use Committee, somebody from the county. So there's a lot of county staff, and I think one of the things that's occurred over the years of CCAG is that the relationships between the cities and the county have significantly improved because they're working together rather than opposing each other. And so I think that's a very positive thing about the way in which CCAG has worked, and that benefits everybody. And the more positive recognition you get there, of course, the better it is for the city.
Sure. One of the things that was brought up was, having all council members have that exposure. It seems like we have a tradition in Brisbane where, once council members on a subcommittee, they tend to stay with that subcommittee. Here with the CCAG, we've had, beside yourself, then we had Lee Panza. Once Lee gave up the position when he retired from the council, then Seppi took that position, has been our representative over that time. And this is something that you can chime in on too, Terry. I mean, but mostly for you, Ray. Is this, do you think that there should be a term limit type situation where you bring in someone new, or is it good to have that same person in there gathering up that knowledge, taking in that experience, so that they can continue to represent the city in an effective way?
Oh, no, he was asking you.
Yeah, okay, no.
Yeah, maybe I should be more towards you, right?
Yeah.
You're the one that's got the experience.
Motion to extend the meeting for 15 minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, the interesting thing was that when I was on CCAG, because I was the first chair, and then I stayed as chair as long as I wanted to, because everyone seemed to be comfortable with the role that I was playing. But after I left the chair voluntarily, they then established term limits. So CCAG now has term limits on the chair, which didn't exist in my day. And so one of the reasons that I stayed there, from the point of view of our council, was great to have me as chair of the countywide organization. So it was very good for Brisbane. But that kind of thing doesn't, the longevity of that is reduced now because of the term limits of the officers. So that's changed. I think otherwise it's kind of a call of what the council feels comfortable with. Is it good to stay with one person, or is it good to have change? And that really is the issue once in a while. And I'm not so sure you need to do it on any kind of specific time basis, but it really is a question of stick with one person or change once in a while.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. All right. I'm going to take it back to you guys one last time. Clark, if you have any more comments that you want to add.
Well, time-wise, I am a ranking senior member on the council in my 15th year, as is Seppi. Seppi's had the opportunity. Seppi hasn't communicated to us the stuff that's being done, and I think that's important. That I'll do. And I think we need a change there. I think we need a change to look at things from a different perspective. I think maybe bring in some new energy instead of being all comfortable with people on the committee. I think change would be good there, and I want to make change happen. And I think I can do that. I think I can bring a fresh perspective and bring in new energy.
All right. Seppi?
Yes, I have not been comfortable. Most of them would know that I've challenged things. I've been at the table, I've been active. It's not just because I wanted to be there. I've worked hard. I've put the time and energy to do what needs to be done. I have been involved, when you were talking about it's very important, allocation of funding and so forth. I've been very engaged, very involved. I was the one that actually changed the budget The budget was very uninformative and so forth. Have worked with it continuously. I'm working involved with that budget. When Clark was talking about with congestion management, I was very involved with that. I have served on that. It has helped my expertise with my knowledge about transportation and shuttles and so forth, have been more effective member at the CCAG board. So that's why I decided not to be on Alliance, because I feel that Alliance have given me a lot of information that I needed to be more effective at CCAG. It's one of the things, again, it's not just going to the board meeting. There's a lot of work involved. There is a lot of subcommittee. It's changed. Again, with all due respect, Mr. Miller, you were very effective, and the work that you did helped us to have more. When Tire has more static on the floor, I don't know the right word, because of your work, we do have a lot of respect, and I work really hard to come up to the leadership. There are some people that maybe they can get it in 1 year, but in my case, I've had to really put the time to come up to the leadership, and I've put my interest about wanting to be chair, and I'm in line in about a year or so to be chair, and I like to have that opportunity.
All right. Before I ask for a motion, we do have these 2 items that both of you would like to have, and I'm just going to throw this out there just to see if anyone takes a bite. So we have, currently CEPI is a representative for CCAG. The BOSCA was SCI, and so Clark, I'm going to ask you, would you be okay with taking the BOSCA and...
No, I want them both.
You want them both? Okay, no, I just throw that out there. Okay. So, we've heard from both the candidates. We've heard a lot of great information about the position. So,
Can I ask one quick question? CEPI's elected to the MTC board?
No. Not MTC.
Which was the one that the...
ABAG, and has nothing to do with our city.
No, not ABAG.
You mean the Transportation
TA,
Authority?
Transportation
Yes.
Authority,
Right.
ABAG,
Okay.
LAFCO.
Okay.
Those are outside.
So you're on the board for the transportation.
Authority, which
Authority.
is 1A funding, yes.
Right.
And that's why CCAG has been a very good match, because they both deal with those issues.
yeah, I should have asked if any of you had questions for...
And
I'm glad you asked the question.
if Clark wants to have the Bay Area water, I would back out from that. I'm not persistent on that. I put it there in case if nobody wanted, then I would be willing to serve on that, but...
You're being less ingenuous on that one.
What?
Okay, let's not go there, guys, all right? So, any more questions of the candidates, Terry or Ray? No. Okay. Sure, it's definitely a tough decision to make. I think we got 2 strong candidates. We have one that has a lot of experience. We have someone who feels that they can bring more energy to the position. So, is there anyone who wants to make a nomination? Right? I mean, we get, it's going to be, anybody want to make a nomination? No one wants to make a nomination.
Can I say one more thing? It's not good to be homogenous.
We have to...
We've been homogenous.
Someone has to make a motion. You can't just call a vote, right?
No, you got to have a motion.
You got to have a motion. Someone has to nominate someone, and then...
I'll go out on a limb then. And it's hard because when 2 people want this want the position, it makes it very difficult. And with our, I hate to put strife in there, but I'm going to make a motion to nominate Clark for the position. And I'm just going to preface it that I sort of ran on an idea of change, and I think stirring it up and shaking it up can make a difference. And I mean no disrespect to Councilmember Richardson in this nomination.
Okay, so we have a...
Second.
We have a second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
I'll say no.
Okay.
All right, so motion carries. Clark Conway is the representative for CCAG. All right. I had, let's see, Clay, do you have a brief description, please?
Yeah, Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency. It oversees the negotiations with San Francisco PUC for the non-PUC. I'm sorry.
Sorry, you're not on.
No, it's on. I think my voice just is not carrying very well. It oversees the negotiation and relationship between the non-San Francisco PUC water agencies and the San Francisco PUC. It deals with water supply issues. It deals with various issues having to do with transfers of water in between agencies. It operates basically from a couple of master contracts that drive its responsibilities. It was established by state law, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. Clark, I'll have you go first.
Okay. I've served on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee for a long time, since 2005. And this is, I think, internally one of the toughest subcommittees to serve on. It's never good news, and with the water rates and everything like that, Bosca is directly related to that, being part of that organization. And I think a member who is on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee should be on Bosca. And that's why I applied for it. Cy was a member before. He was my co-member on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee, and I think I should be appointed with that. I think it goes hand in hand with the Water and Sewer Subcommittee.
All right. Seppi?
Yes, speaking of change, I think it's, a person has been on water and sewer for a long time. If we continue that philosophy about change, I'd like that to change, and I'd like to have the opportunity of serving in this Bay Area Water Committee. I've had, again, a lot of experience in this. Part of it is part of my involvement with ABAG. I've managed to serve on the Regional Planning Committee. That, again, gives me the qualification and expertise that I need to have to serve on that committee.
Okay. Council members, you've heard from staff, a couple of heard from each council member. Is there something that you're looking for in this position that...
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah. So what kind of decisions does this body actually make?
Well,
I mean, they're basically advisory to San Francisco, right?
Well, they're advisory, except that there are the master agreement, which basically then weaves its way back through the member agencies. There's recommendations that come out of this board. Now, that's all kind of already in place, so none of that's going to change. And it's really an agency that's been set up to give voice to all the water agencies that are not San Francisco, because San Francisco runs the system. And it was, I think, instrumental several years ago in terms of trying to push forward the issue of the Hetch Hetchy system seismic upgrades. And it is also kind of a watchdog to make sure that the distribution of costs between San Francisco and the non-San Francisco agencies is fair and is done according to the formula that's set up. It doesn't have, it's not like CCAG where it has authority over certain things and can make those kinds of decisions. It's really more being able to make recommendations to San Francisco PUC and to try to nudge them along in certain directions.
Thanks.
All right. Council members, one last opportunity to speak about it. So, Seppi, anything else you want to add?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Clerk, anything else that...
Just to reiterate that I think that a person who serves on the BAUSCA representative should be on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee. I am on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee, and I want to have the appointment. I think it goes hand in hand.
Okay. All right. So, I'll entertain a motion. We have...
I'm going to cut it in half. I'd like to nominate Seppi Richardson to BAUSCA.
I will, I think that it's hard to say it's fair to split it, and since Seppi really wants this one, water is gold, and I think it's really important that it's paid attention to, and I will second the nomination for Seppi.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose.
Okay. All right. So next on the agenda, staff reports.
Excuse me. Thank you. For the sake of the hour, just trying to give you a follow-up to the council goal-setting session, which happened on January 28th. I'll have a more complete report at your next meeting once I get the notes back from the consultant who was with us that day. But we'd like to be able to set up at least 3 different workshops, one having to do with financial planning, budgetary issues, which we're recommending to be done next Monday evening. And then the economic development workshop date, and then also one for the Baylands application process. And I think we've provided dates for you for all 3 of those.
Yeah, I think that the workshops are important that we have.
So do you want a motion to approve the schedule?
Yeah.
What exactly days are they? I mean, days of the week?
Mondays.
They're all Mondays,
All Mondays.
Yeah.
All Mondays?
except for the interviews on the 28th.
Yeah, right. In terms of the workshops, Mondays.
Okay.
Commission committee interviews. Okay, that's right. And the meeting on the 28th is for the planning commission.
And traffic and parking.
Correct.
Meeting on 21st is a Tuesday also.
Right, that's correct, because of holiday.
Okay. I just want to get clarification on so those other committees. So we've had those in traffic, we've had in place, but I mean, have we had a lot of participation with those committees? I mean,
No, but if you recall, we didn't really get a chance to talk about it, but at the January 28th workshop, there were a couple suggestions in terms of issues that go before them. So there may be a need and a desire to kind of reinvigorate that particular committee.
Okay. Yeah, I know we brought it up at our goal-setting meeting in regards to staff's time, and you kind of put it back on us, like, hey, you got to give us the direction, we'll make it work. But I'm going to put it back to you, though. I mean, we do have a lot of stuff going on. I mean, if we have these other committees, I just want to make sure that we can do it all.
Well, unfortunately, on the 28th, we didn't get to spend a lot of time on this whole issue of the various issues. So I guess Plan B now is to try to discuss these things in more detail through a series of workshops. So my ability to kind of work with staff and put together kind of a staffing plan is really going to be contingent upon those conversations. Because I just don't know, I can't really make reasonable estimates until we kind of talk through issues.
Okay, so you're hoping the 28th is kind of helping us with that?
That'll be one of them, yeah.
Okay. All right, good. All right, then. So we have a motion to adopt the proposed tentative schedule. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And so who made the motion?
I made the motion.
You made the motion. Do we have a second? Seppi second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, Mayor and Council Matters, Subcommittee Report. I guess we're good with economic development.
Yeah, well, the guy, I wasn't actually at
That's
that
right.
meeting, so-
Okay. No, I don't think we do. So, and we did approve proposed city council meeting schedule. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
In memory.
Oh, that's right. In memory of Mr. Macias and Dawn
Bain.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
We got 2 seconds.
Third it.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sally.
Good meeting, though.
Yeah, that was a good meeting.
A lot of good.